Episode number 501, Zangini's Clan's Nature. Everybody in the room was surprised to hear the shocking news, but while they were surprised, none of them showed interest. Although the Solis bloodline was extremely powerful, they had the Zangini's bloodline running through their veins. It would not only be foolish for them to change it, but an offense to their ancestors.
Husband, is Lord Kabuto really going to pass down his bloodline to someone outside of the Solis clan just like that?
The woman sitting closest to Lord Zangini spoke, voicing the question on everyone's mind. She was a middle-aged woman, but her maturity only made her more enticing, adding a charm some of the younger wives lacked. Kane's eyes sharpened as he heard that. He knew just how unique and powerful the bloodlines of the Deus Behemoth race were, and how they usually kept them within their clan. Besides, passing down a bloodline of such power was not as simple as injecting a wave virus, as a bloodline of such power had already begun to touch the realm of souls. Lord Zangini's turned to his wife, and his wild aura immediately became tame as he adopted a solemn attitude as he spoke to her. No one was surprised by the serene nature of the man, as they all understood just how important the woman was to him.
I was also surprised, since that would surely incite the anger of some people inside the Solis clan. But the madman just said he was doing it because it was the only path and offered no explanation. You know how seers are. They just act according to those strange visions and prophecies and do not care what everybody else thinks about it.
The woman thought for a moment before softly nodding, satisfied with the response, as did everyone else at the table except for one.
Seer.
Kane couldn't help but ask that question, as that was a term he was not familiar with. Of course, he understood that Old World seers were people who claimed they could see the future, but that was clearly not true, and most of them were con men. However, this was not the Old World, it was Ether. Who knew what the word seer could mean in a place full of miracles? Lord Zangini's turned toward Kane, and he could see the confusion and curiosity in this one's eyes.
Well, first of all, as you might deduce, the Solis clan has strong fire and yang powers due to their bloodline, but once every several generations, one awakens a strange aspect of their bloodline known as seer sight. Those people gain the ability to glimpse at the future, but it is very chaotic, and at most they can see bizarre images, forcing them to figure out the meaning behind them.
When Kane heard that there was an ability that could allow you to see the future, he was immediately intrigued. Yet, his interest dwindled as he realized the inefficacy of such power.
I assume that Lord Kabuto will utter the rules of the tournament during the start of it. That is right. The madmen will summon all individuals across the continent who are less than 100 years old and wish to obtain the Solis bloodline. I am sure we will see many youngsters marching toward Bahamut soon.
Kane softly nodded. He was well within the age gap since there were several months until his 19th birthday. Still, if the age limit was 100, it meant he would be facing a great number of people who might have already reached the peak of the Wave King rank or higher and capable of deploying even greater power. If Kane could unleash all his power, he would have a great sense of confidence, but he would have to win the tournament without showing his astral rebirth path of power. I guess I must overcome everybody just using my essence evolution path of power. A red light appeared in Kane's eyes as his fighting spirit burst. Since he had decided on a goal, he would destroy all obstacles in his path to achieve it. Although Kane did not say a word, Lord Zangini saw the bursting willpower in the eyes of the young man, and his smile grew wider.
Since you only have 3 weeks, you should be using every second to train. The creature you summoned during the battle with the brat was strong, but it could not fully express your battle power, am I right?
Kane was not surprised that Lord Zangini's could see through his spells. After all, the man was someone in the late divine ascension realm.
That is right. The Dark Blood God Phantom technique has several levels. Nevertheless, I have only managed to obtain up to the 3rd level, and the power of this one is at the bottom of the apotheosis realm, which my essence cultivation is already rising above.
Although Kane said it as if it was nothing impressive, everyone at the table looked at him as if he were a monster. Being able to display that level of battle power while being a wave champion was simply too fantastic. If Kauto and Lord Zangini's had not seen it before, they would have had difficulty accepting it, but there was no way to deny it.
Then we should visit the art hall. We have several powerful arts that can be useful to you, especially since you favor the law of blood.
Experience Tales with Freeweb Novel. Cain was honestly surprised to see the level of friendship and closeness Lord Zanguines was showing, as the saint techniques of a family were one of their greatest secrets and the key behind their power, something they guarded very closely.
Although I am very thankful for your help, I don't feel comfortable accepting such gifts without giving anything in return.
Although Cain was tactful, Lord Zanguines had lived for a long time, so he could see the hidden message in those words. Still, he did not get angry and only burst into laughter.
Ha 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 ha, brat, you don't have to worry. My invitations have no strings or anything like that. It's just the nature of our family. That is how my father raised me and how I raise my children.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 502, Crimson Void Cultivation Technique. Lord Zanguines spoke in a friendly manner as he smiled, but he saw that Cain's eyes were still vigilant.
Brat, our clan has always helped honourable warriors without reservation. We are indeed binding you from a certain point, but only through friendship and gratitude, nothing more. The 7 wives and 14 children turned toward Cain with smiles, and there was no trace of deception in their faces. Cain was momentarily at a loss for words and couldn't help but be amazed at the level of this scheme. It was direct, and unless you were a complete bastard who would betray those who helped you, it would work. He indeed felt at a loss since, as someone who liked to repay all his debts, he would certainly not forget this help.
I see, then I can only say I will remember this grace. That's more like it.
Lord Zanguines smiled as he stood from his chair and looked at the rest of his family.
The dinner is over. All of you return to your training or whatever you were doing.
Everybody was already used to the easygoing attitude of the family patriarch, so they all stood up from their chairs and after saying goodbye left the room, except for Desmond and Kauto. The duo was interested in seeing what kind of technique Cain would choose and wanted to tag along. Cain didn't mind, so he just nodded to the duo, and the trio followed Lord Zanguines out of the castle. They calmly headed to a large black building embedded into the base of the blood volcano. Many members of the Zanguines clan were in the area, but they all moved away as they saw Lord Zanguines bowing to the man. However, they also couldn't help but focus on the young Godslayer human following him, who could walk side by side with his sons. Cain was already used to being the center of attention, so he ignored those gazes and observed the surroundings. As soon as he entered the massive black building, he noticed several shelves with rows and rows of starry gems of all types and plaques describing the names of the techniques. There was a force that stopped him from sending out his ego wave. Cain didn't think too much of it, understanding that such measures were necessary to protect the contents of those starry gems. Lord Zanguines did not stop walking as he headed to the rear of the building. It didn't take long for them to reach a massive gate, one that the rest of the Zanguines clan members did not dare to get close to, but the man just waved his hand, and the next second it opened up. Cain followed Lord Zanguines into the room, and once they were inside, the door behind them immediately closed. As soon as that happened, the restrictive force hindering his ego wave faded, which confused him. Since this place clearly held the strongest techniques, it would make sense that it was the most protected one, yet that did not seem to be the case.
Anyone who has the right to enter this place has earned my trust, and there is no need to be vigilant around them.
Lord Zanguines noticed the confusion in Cain's eyes, so he dispelled the young man's doubts. Cain nodded as that explanation matched the nature of the man in front of him. When there was someone Lord Zanguines wished to help, he would trust them and treat them like family. After clasping his hand to the old man, Cain began to look around the room and saw 15 pillars, each topped with a starry gem.
These are the most powerful techniques of the Zanguines clan, capable of cultivating into the divine ascension realm. Look around and tell me what interests you.
Lord Zanguines uttered those words and remained silent, as did Kauto and Desmond. None of them wanted to influence Cain's decision, as this was something that could define his cultivation path for a long time. Cain nodded to the patriarch of the Zanguines clan and began to examine the starry gems. He saw several saint cultivation techniques of the astral path of power, but they followed the warlock system, so they would not help him much. Besides, he was supposed to have his astral rebirth heart crippled, so he paid proper attention to those of the essence evolution path. The saint cultivation techniques of the essence evolution path of power followed the inner universe system, which was the same for the Godslayer humankind and Deus Behemoth race. All the techniques had extraordinary abilities, with some capable of generating gargantuan beasts capable of leveling cities with a single wave of their claws. However, Cain's eyes sharpened as he gazed upon the last one.
Crimson Void cultivation technique. Cain was immediately attracted to the technique, as he saw it was a saint cultivation technique that could be used at close range, something that most essence evolution cultivators would only do in a desperate situation. However, it was a feat he could fully exploit, since it would allow him to use the full power of his body and astral rebirth path of power. The cultivation technique focused on the power of the law of blood, but also required domain over the law of space. Although it would have been better if it focused on the law of darkness, there was not really a problem since he was already getting used to the idea that his lineage would soon change. Find more adventures on Freeweb Novel. Taking a moment, Cain closed his eyes. He sent his ego wave into the starry gem, and the next second he was transporting into an illusion featuring a stoic middle-aged man with a thin yet muscular body covered in bloody scales. The middle-aged man assumed a meditative position in the sky as suddenly, the space around his body grew denser and denser, exponentially increasing the gravity and pressure around him. Nowhere was this effect more potent than in his evolution core. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 503, Split a Mountain in Two. Cain could see everything, including the interior of the man's body, and saw how the pressure was tempering the essence wave. However, while the overwhelming density of space had wondrous effects tempering the energy pool, it was so much that the evolution core was about to shatter. It was at this point that the man's blood vitality began to burn as it voraciously consumed copious amounts of blood energy, using them as a stream of vitality and regenerative power to help the sacred organ endure the pressure. Use space to generate immense pressure in order to temper your essence wave, only to use your vitality and blood energy to reinforce the sacred organ. It was an extremely dangerous training style that required immense focus and control, but the benefits were, without a doubt, overwhelming. There was a solemn expression in the middle-aged man as he made several feathers with powerful space energy spread in the surroundings. It did not take long for space to begin to tremble, and soon the world changed, with the clouds going red and a river of blood forming beneath him. It grew larger and larger until it managed to cover several kilometers. The man stood like that for several minutes before opening his eyes, adopting a battle stance as he gazed at a massive mountain before him and made a gigantic halberd appear. He began to wave the halberd, generating arcs of compressed blood energy as he moved around the sky, performing spatial distortion. Those skills could make him flawless among the lower ranks, but any wave king could easily overcome them. However, he did not remain in that state for long as the power of the law of blood and law of space grew stronger. The next second, he began to move the halberd with even greater power, generating spatial rifts that unleashed waves of destructive blood energy. Simultaneously, a blood barrier formed around him, bending space to deflect projectiles and using blood energy to absorb impacts. It was not the end. The man waved his halberd, and arcs of blood energy appeared hundreds of meters away from his position, leaving large cracks in the mountains as his body constantly shifted from one direction to the other, performing minor teleportations. His mastery over the laws grew even stronger the next second as the defensive veil around him evolved, generating cracks in space. All of them contained an incredible amount of blood energy that seemed capable of destroying everything that came in touch with them, stopping attacks from touching the man. The man's eyes grew sharp as he raised his halberd and began to condense the power of the law of blood and space in its tip, conjuring a spinning vortex of blood and spatial energy. This vortex drew in and shredded anything caught within its range. Your next episode number is on Freeweb Novel. Once the vortex reached its zenith, the man sent it hurtling toward the mountain like a meteor, making a huge hole appear in it. Cain was already shocked by that sight, as that vortex of blood and energy had more than enough power to destroy a large city and could kill peak Apotheosis realm masters. But the middle-aged man had not finished yet. The man took a deep breath as all the power in his evolution car began to concentrate in his halberd as he raised it. That was not all, since he also channeled in the halberd the red clouds in the sky and the oceans of blood that covered the ground. Once the power in the halberd began to twist gravity around the man, he waved it down, and a massive tear in space appeared, extending for over 1,000 meters and unleashing an explosive amount of blood energy that cleaved the mountain in half. Kane's eyes widened with awe and shock, as that attack was the closest thing he had seen to the sod strike from the first collapsing lightning pillar used on the Blood Sea. It is a supreme cultivation technique, with overwhelmingly powerful offensive and defensive skills and an amazing domain ability. After seeing the mountain being split in half, the illusion finally ended. Kane opened his eyes the next second, and there was a decisive light in them as he stared at the starry gem and knew he wanted it. It was perfect for him, since it perfectly suited his battle style.
I see you made a choice. The Crimson Void cultivation technique could be considered the strongest of the Essence evolution path of power techniques. Of course, it is also incredibly difficult since it requires great mastery over the law of space.
Lord Zanguini's noted, softly nodding. While it was challenging to master, it was also fitting for a monster genius like the Godslayer human before him.
You can take it, but remember to return it in the future, as we only have 4 starry gems with the complete technique.
Kane took the starry gem and performed a bow as he stared at the man.
I greatly appreciate your help. I know it is not much, but if you want, I have no problem handing you a new starry gem with the complete Usura form so anyone can use it.
Desmond already had a starry gem with Usura form all the way to the 3rd gear, but the deal he and Kane made was that only he could use it, not to mention that the young man needed the starry gem to keep increasing his proficiency. Although Desmond managed to reach the 3rd gear, he was still at the bottom and required more practice if he wanted to harness the full power of the skill while reducing the backlash. Lord Zanguini's and Prince Kauto immediately smiled as they heard Kane's proposal. Both had seen the power of Usura form, and it was a truly powerful skill that could raise the strength of figures at the Divine Ascension realm like them.
Ha, I would not say no to a token of friendship.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 504, Space Orbs. Lord Zanguini smiled as he nodded to Kane and accepted the proposal. After that, he looked at the young man for a moment before speaking again.
For the domain aspect of the Crimson Void cultivation technique, you need treasures capable of harnessing the power of space. I have one in our armory, and I could lend it to you while you remain in the Bahamut sector.
Kane smiled as he heard that. Of course, he was not so shameless as to expect the man to give him the treasure, but he was not too keen on just having it borrowed. So, after a moment, he waved his hand and took out the thin blood saber he stole from Sabina, the Divine Ascension Master from the Blood Path.
I wonder if this would be enough to buy the treasures. I could not erase the ego mark on it, but I am sure it is a powerful artifact of the blood type capable of unleashing Divine Ascension rank power.
Lord Zanguini's looked at the weapon with surprise, as did Kauto and Desmond. The fact that Kane had an artifact with the ego mark of a Divine Ascension Master intact most likely meant he stole it from that person.
Allow me.
Lord Zanguini spoke as he took the weapon, and his eyes began to glow with golden light. The thin red saber trembled momentarily, but Sabina's ego mark could not endure long against the man's willpower and soon crumbled, allowing him to inspect the weapon.
Oh, impressive. This artifact can be used by even those at the late divine stage, and it is perfectly suitable for those who train in the law of blood. Are you sure you want to exchange it?
Lord Zanguini's did not try to hide the artifact's power, and even though it would be helpful for the Zanguini's clan, he asked the young man if he wanted to carry on the deal. Kane smiled as his impression of the Zanguini's clan kept growing better, and he softly nodded. While the artifact was powerful, it could only carry Essence Wave, so it would not work for him.
The price of the space orbs is slightly below the blood saber. Brat, what do you say if I help you exchange your merits from your work in the Colossus sector for the chance to train in the Spatial Rift Grotto? It is a unique cultivation ground full of spatial disturbances, very useful to master the law of space.
Lord Zanginis knew that Kane would not have said anything even if the exchange was not exactly equal, but the entire goal of this exchange was to form a sense of trust and friendship, so he wanted to help. Kane would not refuse such a good offer, so he nodded with a smile and was more than happy with the exchange.
Great, we will leave tomorrow for the Spatial Rift Grotto. You should take this chance to rest, as once you enter the grotto, you might find yourself in danger if you lose focus for even a second. Will do.
Since everything was in order, the four left the room and soon exited the building.
Desmond, bring your friend to his room to rest. Kauto, you will accompany me to the capital.
Everybody nodded after hearing Lord Zanginis's words. The next second, Kauto and the old man rose to the sky before flashing into the distance, while Desmond brought Kane to one of the rooms in the castle.
Brother, this is one of the most comfortable rooms. Remember, you should rest as the Spatial Rift Grotto is indeed dangerous.
Kane smiled as he nodded to Desmond and said goodbye to him as he entered the room. He was not so arrogant as to ignore the warning from someone with Lord Zanginis's power, so he went to bed and truly slept, allowing his body a proper rest. Kane woke up after 8 hours and felt his mind in a state of complete peace and serenity, as the sleep had indeed alleviated all the pressure and tension he had accumulated. He even felt his energy running more smoothly across his body, and his mind was clearer. With a few hours remaining until departure, he took an empty starry gem from his space ring and began engraving Asura form into it. His mastery of the technique was supreme, and he could maintain third gear without backlash for a few minutes. Normally, one would think that Kane would start to think of the next step, but things were not so simple. Third gear pushed your blood flow to the theoretical limit that your circulatory system could endure. Even someone like Kane could only tolerate it for a few minutes, and the moment he became a wave king, he would lose that ability as the strength of his heartbeat would increase, and so would the pressure that third gear would generate. Of course, Kane already thought of a way to fix it since, as soon as he became a wave king, he planned to push the biomtal Herculean technique to the 4th level, Platinum Hot, which would once again allow him access to third gear. As he finished engraving the skill into the starry gem, Kane looked at it with a solemn expression on his face. There is no such thing as a 4th gear. To push it to the next level, I will need a complete evolution of Asura Form's principles. Stay connected through Freeweb Novel. Kane pondered that train of thought for a long time, but in the end, he did not come up with something better and could only accept that third gear was his limit, at least for the time being. He exited the room and went to the castle's entrance, where he saw Lord Zanginis descending from the sky.
Good, you are ready. Here in this space ring are the 12 space orbs.
Kane grabbed the space ring and saw inside a massive dimension larger than all of his other space rings combined.
The place is far, so hold on.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 505, Spatial Rift Grotto I. Before Kane could even say a word, the man grabbed him by the shoulder, and the next second, they rose to the sky before flashing west of the Blood Volcano at a speed several hundred times faster than the speed of sound. Kane could do nothing but focus his essence wave around his body to avoid the wind from burning his skin. Luckily, it did not take long, and they soon appeared above the sky of a massive cave. Despite the grand entrance, a mysterious force obstructed the light, leaving only darkness visible inside.
Boom.
Lord Zanginis did not say a word before he and Kane descended with overwhelming strength, shattering the ground with his feet. Kane's senses were still a little foggy since the Deus Behemoth Archduke's speed was overwhelming even for him. Still, his eyes immediately grew sharp as he turned to the cave entrance and saw 2 figures suddenly materializing. One of them was a young woman with a fierce appearance and silver fur covering her shoulders, as well as wolf ears and a tail, with a sword at her waist. As for the other, he was a bulging man with sharp eyes and a bronze exoskeleton covering his figure. The duo immediately stepped forward as they clasped their hands and performed a slight bow.
Artemis of the Fenrir clan greets His Highness Archduke Zanguines. Coralles of the Kraken clan greets His Highness Archduke Zanguines.
Although the duo were peak apotheosis masters and holders of the Deus Behemoth's 10 great bloodlines, their status could not compare with the man, so they immediately bowed. However, the next second, their eyes turned to the Godslayer human next to him.
He is Colonel Lorifer, a friend of the Zanguines clan, and will use the Spatial Rift Grotto for the next 3 weeks.
The duo was surprised when they heard those words, and one immediately frowned.
How could a human get access for 3 entire weeks all of a sudden?
The one who shouted was not the man from the Kraken clan, but the woman with the fierce appearance. Kane's eyes narrowed as he saw her reaction while keeping an eye on the member of the Kraken clan. The man showed nothing against me. Maybe the vendetta for Natuo doesn't involve the entire clan. As for the woman, I don't understand her reaction. When she first saw me, there was only surprise but no sense of loathing or xenophobia. Odd. Luckily for Kane, he did not have to handle her since Lord Zanguini's eyes immediately grew cold as a shocking bloodline aura emerged from his body, clashing with the woman and making her grow pale. Discover hidden stories at Freeweb Novel.
Colonel Lorifer destabilized the underworld of the Colossus sector on his own, effectively destroying 5 Tier 1 dark factions. Therefore, he earned the right to jump the queue and use the Spatial Rift Grotto for the next 3 weeks. If you have a problem, then do the same, and I am sure your reward will not be less.
Lord Zanguines could have simply used his power to extinguish any resistance, but he chose to explain as he did not want anyone to think that Kane was the type of person who went around pushing his background on others. Shock appeared in the eyes of the 2 peak apotheosis realm masters as they heard those words and turned to Kane with disbelief. Handling dark factions took more than just strength, since they always hid in the darkness where light did not reach. Kane did not offer any comments. His relationship with the Kraken clan was not good, so he preferred to keep some distance from them. As for the woman, since she was against him, why would he waste any time bothering with how she felt? In the end, the duo could only nod and step aside, letting Kane access the cave. Lord Zanguines gave one sharp glance at the duo before turning toward Kane.
The deeper you go in the Spatial Rift Grotto, the stronger the spatial distortions are, which will help you understand the law of space but also increase the danger. Remember not to bite off more than you can chew. I will return to pick you up when the tournament begins.
Kane clasped his hand and nodded to Lord Zanguines before waving his hand and taking a starry gem from his space ring.
I managed to engrave Usura Form's 3rd gear yesterday. Please take it.
A sneer appeared on the face of Artemis as she saw how Kane handed a starry gem to Lord Zanguines. HMPH, who does he think he is? How could Lord Zanguines care about the technique that a measly brat could engrave? Although Coralles did not show the same level of disdain as the woman, he softly shook his head as he thought Kane was only embarrassing himself.
Awesome.
However, the duo was once again shocked as they saw the excitement and thrill in Lord Zanguines' face. Lord Zanguines did not care what the other 2 apotheosis masters thought. He was indeed the definition of acting according to your wishes without caring for anyone else's thoughts and freely expressing your emotions. Since he felt happy, why would he hide it just to make other people think better of him? Kane couldn't help but smile, finding the old man's behavior truly refreshing. Still, he did not waste time and bowed again to Lord Zanguines before walking into the grotto. Lord Zanguines waited until Kane's figure vanished inside the Spatial Rift Grotto before sending a sharp glance at the 2 and flashing into the sky before disappearing. Artemis and Coralles looked at each other. The next second, their minds concentrated on their space rings as they sent the information about what had just happened to their respective families. Their primary role was to guard the grotto, which was the property of the Deus Behemoth Empire, but they were also in charge of keeping an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 506, Spatial Rift Grotto, I. The moment Kane walked into the grotto, his eyes immediately grew sharp, and he released his ego wave as there was nothing but darkness. It was as if the moment he crossed the cavern's edge, he had been transporting into an entirely new dimension. It wasn't just his eyes. Kane felt his connection to the outside world severed, and there was no way to communicate. His ego wave allowed him to focus on the surroundings, revealing that he was in a dark cave without any sign of life. The most important part, however, was the strange state of space inside. Although weak, there were minor spatial fluctuations as he moved forward. They were not dangerous, but caused slight shifts in distance or perspective, leading to mild disorientation or dizziness. Luckily for him, his mind was strong enough to overcome those feelings. Of course, Kane hadn't come here to resist the disturbance. After the disorientation became strong enough to affect his senses and prevent him from moving in a straight line, he stopped and closed his eyes. Kane's mind focused on the state of space around him, trying to bring order to its chaotic state. His mind worked faster and faster as he sensed the hundreds of variations and changes. An average human would never be able to do anything but falter before such power. Inside Kane's abdomen, an organ full of energy carried elemental aspects of existence, aiding his perception of the world's phenomena. Minute by minute, Kane's mind gained perspective as he understood the principles of such strange power. On the third day, Kane opened his eyes, and as he stepped forward, all the sensations of distortion faded. Kane's mind was able to bring order to the disturbance, allowing him to walk in a straight line. It was incredibly minor, but Kane had developed an understanding of space's esoteric and ever-expanding power. Kane continued moving forward. The cavern had only one path, but the distortion in space was growing so strong that he felt there were hundreds and was forced to stop at a point as he did not know if he was standing on the ground or the ceiling. The distortion was so strong that it forced Kane to sit, as the sense of disorientation was too much for him to stand. His ego wave helped his mind achieve focus, ignoring the sense of nausea as he perceived the strange phenomena. Once again, Kane sought to achieve a sense of order, but after an hour, he gave up. The distortion was so significant that there was no order to attain. Ultimately, thinking beyond three-dimensional space was the only way to make headway in this distortion. It was already common knowledge that there were all sorts of strange and hidden dimensions ordinary people could not access, such as the hidden realms. Discover stories with Freeweb novel. Once Kane's mind let go of the notion that space was only what you saw with your eyes, he pushed his comprehension of space to the next level, slowly gaining an understanding of the distortion that threatened to cripple his senses. Every day, Kane's comprehension of the law of space grew deeper, making giant leaps as he figured out how to navigate the distortion. He did not move a muscle for nearly 2 weeks before finally standing up and taking a firm step forward. A sense of clarity appeared in his eyes as he extended his hand, and the next second, slaughter appeared in it. With every step Kane took, streams of sharp blood energy emerged from his weapon, but that was not all, as every swing pushed the power of space to the next level. Kane was taking the chance to train in the Crimson Void cultivation technique. His proficiency in the technique increased more and more until, suddenly, his eyes glowed with enlightenment. At that second, Kane made his essence wave and blood energy explode, channeling all of it into slaughter as he swung the weapon down, generating a small spatial rift that unleashed waves of blood energy, destroying everything in front of him.
Quantum laceration.
Kane showed a radiant smile on his face as he saw that strike. The Crimson Void Saint cultivation technique had 5 levels. The first one was the foundation stage, signifying a small understanding of the forces of blood and space, yet you were still far from accessing the skills of the technique. However, once you deepen the connection with blood and spatial energies, integrating them into your attacks and being able to trigger the offensive skills, it means that you reach the consolidation stage. Kane had no bloodline or unique treasure that improved his understanding of the law of space, so reaching this level in less than 3 weeks was simply mind-blowing. Still, he was not satisfied and continued walking forward, striking slaughter repeatedly as he used the power of spatial distortion to temper his mind and senses. After nearly 500 steps, Kane's instincts screamed. There was nothing around him, but without hesitation, he stepped aside just in time to see the spot where he was standing burst with spatial energy. It was as if space had folded onto itself, unleashing a devastating force. Without hesitation, Kane took several steps back and only then relaxed. No wonder Lord Zanguinis and Desmond said this place was dangerous. Although I would have survived without a problem, thanks to the strength of my body and astral wave. That blast could have destroyed the body of a normal essence wave champion. After a moment, Kane decided to turn around and head to the exit. Those spatial collapses were dangerous, not to mention his 3 weeks were over, and he needed to leave this place. Luckily, the way back was much faster since it was no different than walking through a forest. Kane had just taken a step outside the caverns, and before his eyes could even adjust to the light, a hand grabbed his shoulder and flashed into the sky at an overwhelming speed. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 507, Lord Kabuto. Immediately, Kane's eyes narrowed, and he was about to unleash all his power when he noticed that the one holding him was none other than Lord Zanguines. There was an expression of distress on the old man's face as he flashed with all his power into the distance.
Damn brat, why did you wait until the last second? We need to hurry up or else you will be disqualified. What is happening? That crazy bastard said that anyone who has not reached the test zone before the sun reaches its highest peak is disqualified. He just uttered the command this morning.
Kane finally understood what was happening. It seemed that a sudden deadline had been added to Lord Kabuto's tournament. Lord Zanguini's face was full of frustration as he clenched his teeth and pushed his speed to the absolute limit, but by the expression on his face, it seemed that they would not make it. In the distance, Kane saw a majestic golden tree that rose for dozens of thousands of meters and a city built around it. That seemed to be the designated area, but he stared at the sky and saw that the sun was just seconds away from its zenith.
Brat, you have a strong body, right?
Experience Tales with Freeweb Novel. Kane got a bad feeling when he heard those words but nodded, and he saw a wide smile appearing on the old man's face the next second. Hundreds of people from different clans stood in the ground outside the city built around that massive golden tree. Not very far from them, there were dozens of powerhouses in the sky. The ones on the ground were those who sought to participate in the tournament, while those in the sky were the family and friends of the ones with powerful backgrounds. All the people who sought to participate in the tournament focused on the crown of the gargantuan golden tree. On the peak of the majestic golden tree was a large podium with 3 massive thrones, and an imposing figure sat on each. The ones on the left and right were a middle-aged man and a woman with auras that seemed capable of flooding the sky and a divine soul. However, the one that captured everybody's attention was the man on the middle throne, which was also the grandest. He looked no different than an old man with long white hair and a beard, but that was just the beginning. His eyes glowed with golden light, and a sphere of golden flames was in the center of his forehead. His ears were pointy like a lion's, and golden antlers emerged from the back of his head, forming what seemed to be a crow. This man was none other than the current patriarch of the Solis clan and the orchestrator of this entire tournament, much to the disgust of several members of his own clan.
All right.
Lord Kabuto sighed as he saw all the people on the ground, full of eagerness and thrill, as if this was their chance to change their destinies and rise to the sky in a single leap. Maybe this was a mistake.
Boom.
Just as that thought crossed Lord Kabuto's mind, he heard a sonic boom and looked into the distance, only to see a projectile flashing toward the tournament area. However, upon closer inspection, it was not a projectile, but a young man with black hair and a red robe.
Red.
Lord Kabuto couldn't help but rise from his seat and shout that word, confusing everybody around him. Kane was too far to hear the man's voice. Even if he did, he would not have had time to worry about it. His eyes burst with willpower as his entire body transformed into a stream of shadows just as he was about to clash with the ground. Everyone saw how the human, who came crashing down like a meteor, suddenly transformed his body into darkness before rotating, diminishing his momentum, and avoiding a collision with the ground before landing gracefully.
Darn geezer.
Kane couldn't help but shout toward the distant figure of Lord Zanguines. The man had grabbed him as if he were a spear, thrusting him at a speed that made Kane feel like his skin would peel off. Had it not been for his reflexes and shadow constitution, he would have been forced to resist the impact, using his astral rebirth path of power. All the Deus Behemoth participants in the tournament were shocked to see a human appear out of nowhere. And when they heard him shouting, they turned to the distance, only to see the patriarch of the Zanginis clan approaching. Many of them could not believe a young godslayer human that seemed to have come out of knowledge would dare to call the patriarch of one of the 10 great bloodlines a geezer. Yet, Lord Zanginis' reaction was a laugh.
Ha 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 ha, brat, don't worry about the small details. You made it in time.
Lord Zanginis seemed unconcerned by Kane's words and just laughed as he turned toward Kabuto, the patriarch of the Solis clan.
Madman, I brought you someone new. He's a personal friend of the Zanginis clan. Actually, you should foresee the entire tournament, as all others will just be embarrassing themselves if they compete with this brat.
Kane sighed as he heard those words, feeling the stares of the other contestants. He was sure that if stares could kill, he would have died 100 times over.
Old lunatic.
Kane didn't bother to hide his thoughts. He was upset about being dragged around like a doll, and he knew that Lord Zanginis didn't care about it. He turned to the geniuses supposed to participate in the tournament, but didn't focus on them for long, as his eyes soon turned to the figure on the throne atop the majestic golden sun. Although they were thousands of meters apart, Kane concentrated his energy to get a closer look and frowned as he saw the strange light in the old man's eyes. Why is he looking at me like that? Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 508, Solis Clan.
Why is he looking at me like that?
Kane couldn't help but feel weird as he saw how Lord Kabuto not only focused on him, but also had a strange and somewhat bizarre light in his eyes. Not wanting to draw too much unnecessary attention, he performed a small bow toward the figures on the thrones before walking to the side of the other contestants. Lord Kabuto's eyes glowed with golden light as he regained control of his emotions, noticing the strange look in the eyes of the other Divine Ascension Masters of the Solis clan. Continue reading on Freeweb Novel.
I am sorry for that, it was nothing.
Although the old man did not offer a real explanation, the other two could do nothing but nod as, regardless of their status and power, they could not question the behavior of the patriarch. Lord Kabuto's focus did not linger on the duo for long, soon turning to the old man marching toward him with a giant smile.
Wildebeest, where did you find that boy?
Lord Zanginis stopped his march once he stood before Lord Kabuto, patting the old man Zero's shoulders with so much strength that the space trembled.
Ha ha ha, it seems that Brat made an impression on you. Kane is my son's friend from the Gaia continent, who reached Hyperion right before the cataclysm.
Lord Zanginis saw no reason to hide Kane's information, so he revealed it. However, Lord Kabuto's eyes narrowed once again as he turned to the young man in the red robe.
Managed to reach Hyperion right before all paths were severed, and now reached the tournament a second before the deadline.
Lord Kabuto mumbled those words, but Lord Zanginis didn't think much of it, being accustomed to his friend's strange behavior. He then turned to the throne on the left, focusing on the male Divine Ascension Master in it.
Are you going to let an old man stand while you sit?
The Divine Ascension Master from the Solis clan sighed as he heard those words. He resembled a middle-aged man, but that was just by choice, and he was actually older than Lord Zanginis. Nonetheless, he could only stand up and move to the side as the patriarch of the Zanginis clan sat down. Lord Kabuto watched his friend take one of the thrones, but remained focused on Kane before a decisive light appeared in his eyes, and he took a step forward, unleashing all the power of his bloodline. Waves of radiation spread for dozens of kilometers, reaching the people on the ground. Those with weak foundations felt their bodies burning, but the stronger ones could stand straight and even harness that power into their flesh and blood. Kane was obviously the latter type, but as a human, he could not fully harness the bloodline radiation spread by the old man. However, that mattered very little as his eyes soon focused on the illusion of the majestic creature that replaced Lord Kabuto. It was a mythical beast with the body of a lion, the antlers of a deer, and golden scales with 2 majestic wings that emerged from its back. Although it was not as physically imposing as the blood-world snake that appeared from Lord Zanginis' bloodline, It had a regal aura and seemed to carry the power of the sun and good fortune.
I see many people full of will and drive who have come to get this old man's bloodline, but only 10 will pass to the next stage.
Nearly 300 people were on the ground, and they were shocked to hear that the first test would eliminate over 95%. Of course, while some were terrified, there were those who showed confident smiles, looking at everybody else with a sense of superiority. Lord Kabuto's eyes could see the reaction of every challenger, but his gaze returned to Cain again and again. The Godslayer human was not the type to show fear, nor was he the kind to look down on the others for their reactions, standing as if nothing that had happened so far could affect him. Not wasting time, Lord Kabuto calmed his bloodline aura, making the majestic beast vanish as he waved his hand, causing 15 golden fireballs to appear in the sky. Not only did the fireballs release great heat, but their power also generated an overwhelming gravitational force, increasing the gravity in the area exponentially.
The first 10 to stand before me will earn the right to pass to the next stage.
Lord Kabuto raised his hand and waved it down. That action marked the beginning, and immediately, every one of the warriors made their energy pool explode, pushing Wave Burst to its absolute limit as they triggered their fastest spells and skills, flying to the sky with all they had. The ones that took the lead were fairly young, most of them 50 or 40 years old, with those nearing the age limit actually falling behind. While age could measure one's cultivation time, it was not a good determinant of strength, especially among geniuses. The one that took first place was a young wave king with golden wings on his back and eagle-like eyes. His bloodline was extraordinarily pure and strong, and he had a radiant smile full of confidence. Closely following the man with golden wings was a bulky young man with a mane covering his head and shoulders, and there was a fierce light in his eyes as dark energy emanated from his fists and hands, propelling him forward. The duo's names were Kylon and Sulon, two known geniuses from the Deus Behemoth Empire, and although they did not come from one of the 10 great bloodlines, their background was not shallow. However, the one that took the third spot was not a Deus Behemoth. Cain was using all his power to advance as fast as he could, but was having a hard time catching up. If he could use third gear and blood wings, he would pass the duo without a problem, but that would mean showing his astral rebirth path of power, and it was not worth it. Third place is fine. Besides, speed is not my forte anyway. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 509, The Flow's Second Level Eye. Although Cain considered taking third place barely acceptable, all the other challengers looked at him with shock and wonder. The reason for the awe in the Deus Behemoth's eyes was that he did not use spells to propel his body and was actually moving slower than the others. Yet, space seemed to distort in his path, diminishing the actual distance he needed to cover. While the challengers were astounded, the 2 early Divine Ascension Masters from the Solis clan in the sky were even more amazed. They were strong enough to see that Cain's cultivation was actually at the late wave champion level, and he was using the law of space to move through the sky. By the level of dominion over space, it was clear that Cain's mastery had already risen above the medium basic understanding and must have reached the deep stage. Although for other laws, a deep basic understanding was shallow and would not catch the eyes of powerhouses like those 4. Things were different when it came to the highly complex and powerful law of space.
Zuko, that boy, when did he begin to train in the law of space?
Kabuto's voice was solemn, and when Lord Zanguini's heard how his old friend spoke to him, he did not joke and responded thoughtfully.
He has been in the spatial distortion grotto for the last 3 weeks. Before that, he had never come into contact with the law of space. How is that possible?
The bulky middle-aged man from the Solis clan, who had to stand up, could not help but shout those words. Although the spatial distortion grotto was an excellent cultivation haven for the law of space, reaching the deep basic understanding in just 3 weeks was too much. It would be different if Cain had a powerful lineage that helped the young man understand the power of the law of space, but that was clearly not the case. The Divine Ascension Master could feel the connection of Cain's bloodline to the law of shadow and law of darkness, but that was it. Lord Zanginis only glanced at the early Divine Ascension Master from the Solis clan. He did not comment on this one's reaction, since he was also startled to see just how much Cain had improved in such a short amount of time.
His essence wave is extremely pure, which could explain his immense attunement to the cosmic forces, but it is still too much.
The other early Divine Ascension Master, still sitting on the throne, spoke with confusion in her eyes. Astral Wave improved the strength and vitality to the point of granting flesh and blood that could endure the fall of a meteorite, while Essence Wave evolved your perception and understanding of phenomena to a realm a mortal mind could not possibly understand. However, Cain was just a wave champion, so no matter how pure his Essence Wave was, there had to be a limit. None of them knew that Cain's Essence Wave and Evolution Core were different from others, as they had undergone an 18-revolution refinement. Lord Kabuto did not say a word after hearing the response from Lord Zanginis, but his eyes narrowed and clenched his fists. That simple motion made the golden spheres of fire grow chaotic, and the next second, they began to shoot fireballs toward the challengers rising into the sky. The challengers were surprised to see the rain of giant fireballs marching toward them, but could calm down as they felt the sphere did not contain the true attack power of a Divine Ascension Master, and it seemed their only goal was to delay them. Kylon and Sulon narrowed their eyes as they took their weapons and flashed forward, doing their best to dodge the giant sphere of fire like everybody else. However, not only were the spheres fast, but they were also enormous, so avoiding them was a challenge. Cain could use the law of space to fold the space between him and the spheres of fire, increasing it to gain more time to react. At the same time, he compressed space so a single step right or left could cover dozens of meters. That was not the only thing that helped Cain, since he had activated the flow to predict the patterns of the spells. Just as he pushed his mind to its peak, he could not help but feel a sense of wonder as he started to see the vibration frequencies and atomic patterns in the spells. Continue your adventure at Freeweb Novel. It was both a new and old feeling since Cain never truly reached this level, but it was something he deployed during his battle against the Azure King. It seemed that his mastery over energy and improvement of his cultivation base had been helping him push the flow to the next level. Cain's eyes burst with red light as he could not help but smile and flashed faster and faster into the sky, easily dodging the sphere of fire. Just a little closer. He was approaching the level but had yet to achieve it and could not help but think that greater pressure might do the trick. So, unlike all the others, he did not slow down his speed and headed straight into the projectiles. Lord Kabuto's eyes narrowed as he observed the behavior of the Godslayer human, and a sharp light appeared in them as he clenched his fists with even more strength, making the fireballs move faster and redirecting them so they would concentrate on Cain. Everyone saw how the fireballs began to move faster and seemed to turn toward the Godslayer human's path, making many of them think that Lord Kabuto was not pleased to see a human doing so well in his tournament. Lord Zanginis could not help but frown as he observed how Kabuto seemed to be targeting Cain, but he remained quiet as he was sure that the young man would manage to overcome the sudden pressure. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 510, The Flow's second level I. Cain cared little about what everybody else thought or why Lord Kabuto would increase the pressure, as he felt he was getting closer to a breakthrough. Up to this point, he had only been able to sense the physical frequencies of physical bodies, allowing him to read his opponent's physical movements before they made them, granting him the chance to evade, deviate, or counter. But that was its limit, and no matter how much he strained his mind and sense, he could not advance further. However, facing the rain of golden fireballs, Cain felt increasingly close to breaking the barrier that stopped his perception from reaching the next level and discerning the frequency energy bodies and their atomic matrix. Achieving that level would grant Cain a genuinely magnificent weapon, not necessarily increasing the power of his body or spells, but granting him a significant advantage during battles, especially against spellcasters. Just as Cain managed to evade another of the golden fireballs and prepared to push forward, dodging the following one, his eyes widened as he saw two more fireballs coming from the right and left. Lord Kabuto did not fire these. Instead, Kylon and Sulon were the ones who sent them. Seeing how Cain was about to surpass them, the Deus behemoths exchanged a secret glance before using all their power to push the fireballs coming towards them at the human. Although that action diminished their momentum, Kylon and Sulon smiled since now Cain had fireballs coming from all directions. The duo was not so malicious as to want to kill Cain. They just hoped to force the young man to pull back, diminishing his speed and granting the duo the advantage again. However, to the Deus behemoth's shock, Cain did not pull back. Instead, the red light in his eyes burst with incredible power as a powerful ego wave at the late apotheosis realm emerged from his brain, pushing his cognitive abilities to the next level. Everybody watched in awe as a monstrous red force field emerged from Cain, and their shock only increased the next second as he used the soles of his feet to kick the fireball in front of him down before extending his hands, touching the surface of the two fireballs with his palms as he rotated his body. Kylon and Sulon could not believe what they saw as Cain seemed to grab a fireball with each of his hands and send them back towards them. Being able to perceive the frequency of energy and their atomic matrix to the point that you can shift their path, allowing their power to flow in different directions, either away or back to the enemies. Stay tuned to Freeweb Novel. That was the second level of the flow.
Boom. Boom.
Two explosions echoed across the sky as the fireballs pushed Kylon and Sulon back. Cain smiled as he saw the duo's misfortune, but did not waste any more time as he turned to the sky with a smile and flashed upward. However, instead of dodging the fireballs, he began to use his hands to shift them, pushing them out of his path as he moved forward. For all the Deus behemoths rising into the sky, it was nothing short of magic, as they could not understand how the fireballs did not explode when they made contact with Cain's hand. But the far divine ascension, masters in the sky knew it was not so simple. They could see how the essence waste covering Cain's hands vibrated in a strange frequency, which allowed him to touch the fireballs without disturbing their flow as he moved them away from his path. However, that only made the shock in the hearts of the divine ascension master grow even more, as the level of skill that Cain was showing was terrific, and they did not understand where the young man had learned such divine powers. Cain began to advance faster and faster, putting more and more distance between him and the others until he finally stood right in front of Lord Kabuto. The patriarch of the Solis clan managed to show a calm expression on the outside, but deep down there was turmoil in his soul and heart. Red, could it be him? Even Cain could not see beyond the calm expression of the old man, and he gazed at him with a plain face. Although the sudden pressure did help him, it did not erase the fact that the old man's spell had been targeting him, something he did not take too happily. A few minutes later, Kylon and Sulon managed to reach the sky and stood before Lord Kabuto. The duo had tired expressions as they were forced to overexert themselves to recover their advantage since the clash with the fireballs pushed them back hundreds of meters. Although the Deus behemoths glanced at Cain with rage, he stood straight and did not bother looking at them. It did not take long for more people to reach the sky, and soon all 10 spots before Lord Kabuto were filled. A look of disappointment appeared in the other hundreds of challengers as the gravitational pressure and fireballs vanished. There was no point in testing them since it was already over. All of them silently left the area, leaving only the 10 fastest in the sky, waiting to see what the next test would be. Lord Kabuto did not bother with those who lost, and his eyes remained on the 10 people standing before him. 9 were wave kings between the middle and late stage, and none were above 50. Yet they all had an excellent foundation, meaning they were very talented individuals capable of jumping levels in battle power. However, the one that drew the most attention from Lord Kabuto, and practically everybody watching the Solis Bloodline tournament, was obviously the wave champion Godslayer human. He displayed great mastery over the law of space, and was capable of somehow redirecting spells with a single touch. Although Lord Kabuto's shock about Cain kept growing more and more powerful, the man did an excellent job hiding everything from everybody.
You 10 have managed to secure your spots for the next phase. Follow me.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 511, Facing an Oceanic Horde, I. Lord Kabuto did not say another word as he flashed toward the massive city built around the golden tree, soon landing in front of a massive platform nearly 2,000 meters wide. Cain and the other challengers did not hesitate before flashing toward the platform. Still, they did so at a regular rhythm, as trying to prove their speed now would only show their weak mentality since it was already defined the fastest. As they descended, Cain scanned the rest of the challengers, and his eyes narrowed as he detected that one of them resembled Artemis, the woman who reacted with rage when he monopolized the spatial rift grotto. If that were all, Cain would not think much of it, but the man also seemed to be a master of the law of space. Although Cain inspected the man without turning in his direction, the Deus Behemoth constantly glanced at him with flashes of anger. If I must guess, the man was surely going to enter the spatial rift grotto before the tournament, but I pushed him out. If he were also that woman's family, it would explain her rash reaction. All these thoughts crossed Cain's mind, but they were just afterthoughts since he did not care if the man disliked him. Even if he had known beforehand that he would gain the hate of another contestant, he would have still entered the grotto without hesitation. Where there was a winner, there would most likely be a loser, and Cain could not live his life thinking how his good fortune could affect others. It did not take long for the 10 contestants to arrive at the platform and saw grades full of people from the Solis clan who seemed to come to watch the tournament. However, what truly drew their attention were the 10 golden formations in the middle of the platform. Lord Kabuto stared at the 10 contestants before his eyes began to burst with a golden light full of killing intent that flooded the surroundings, making the air grow cold to the point that the water particles in the air froze, generating a fog. Cain and the other contestants were surprised to feel the sudden burst of slaughter intent from the peaceful old man, and all of them were forced to trigger their ego wave to endure the pressure.
As all of you should know, the cataclysm that befell Ether not only shattered the sky and scorched the earth, but also provoked the rise of endless hordes of oceanic wave beasts that killed millions upon millions of Deus behemoths living in coastal cities. Such savagery and death cannot be forgotten. Every single one of you will get into one of the sunlight formations and go to a ravaged coastal city. You have 12 hours to kill as many wave beasts as possible. Only the top 5 will pass to the next stage.
After uttering those chilling words, Lord Kabuto sent a golden orb to every one of the contestants.
The sunlight orb will monitor every single kill you make, and after 12 hours, I will cover your bodies with sunlight and flash you back to this location. Of course, if the danger is too much, you can shatter it ahead of time to escape, but that will mean you are disqualified.
The contestants tightened their grip on the golden orb. Although the Wave King Deus behemoths were all very powerful, they were about to be sent to the shores of the Hyperion continent, which were overwhelmed with wave beasts. A Wave King could kill a king beast without much problem and fight dozens of wave champion beasts simultaneously, and each contestant was at least able to deploy peak Wave King battle power. However, they were about to be sent into hordes with thousands of wave champion beasts and hundreds of king beasts. They could die before triggering the sunlight orb if they made a mistake or were too slow, ending their glorious path as food for ferocious beasts. Understanding that, it made sense that the first test would be one that proved speed and agility.
Godslayer human, you will take the sunlight teleportation to the farthest right. The rest can choose according to your wishes.
Cain's brow raised as he heard that command. He was the only one sent to a specific location, while the rest could choose according to their instincts. His eyes narrowed as he was sure that the place he would go would not be exactly the safest, but he did not say a word and walked silently to the formation. Lord Zanghini's eyes narrowed as he saw that, and he could not help but frown. His ego wave was strong enough to perceive the location that those formations connected to, and he was certain that the place Cain would be sent to was the most dangerous of all. Of course, while the patriarch of the Zanghini's clan was angry, some smiled as they saw Lord Kabuto's bias toward Cain. The contestants and their families were the happiest, as Cain was immensely talented, but it seemed that the patriarch of the Solis clan was going to do all in his power to avoid giving his bloodline to a human. As soon as all the participants settled into one of the sunlight formations, the formation started to emit a bright light. It covered each contestant with sunlight and propelled them away at an incredible speed, almost comparable to the speed of light. Even though that was an exaggeration, each contestant moved at a speed that allowed them to cover hundreds of thousands of kilometers in mere minutes. Lord Kabuto's eyes focused on the beam of light that carried Kane, and he began to clench his fists with so much strength that they nearly began to bleed. Continue your saga on Freeweb novel. Red Robe, the Law of Blood, and that red force field. If he surpasses this next test, then. The old man did not carry on with that train of thought anymore, but could not hide the meaningful light that appeared in his eyes. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 512, Facing an Oceanic Horde, Kane's speed of thought allowed him to react hundreds of times faster than the speed of sound, but he was moving at a fraction of the speed of light right now, so the only thing his mind could process was different flashes until suddenly, his body stopped in a sky bursting with lightning and thunder. The lightning storm that covered the continent was supposed to have vanished, yet it remained very vigorous in this place. Kane soon found the answer to this anomaly as he saw a massive tree, not much smaller than the one in the Solis clan's sacred home, but this one was covered in thunder and lightning, constantly discharging its energy into the sky. Although the lightning tree was majestic, Kane did not have time to wonder about it, since hundreds of wave beasts noticed his presence and lunged toward him with madness and hunger. Kane's eyes burst with red light, and just as the wave beasts were about to reach him, 33 daggers emerged from his heart and flashed at hypersonic speed around him. They killed every one of those wave beasts that dared to lunge toward him before expanding their killing field into the distance, creating a 500-meter domain where there was nothing but death to any wave beast beneath the middle king beast rank. Now that his ego wave had reached the late apotheosis realm, and he could infuse the blood nails with his blood energy, essence path, each became a weapon capable of instantly killing a weak king beast. Of course, those weak wave beasts were never a real threat since they could not overcome Kane's body's defenses. His flesh and blood were as hard as a peak golden-level artifact, something weak creatures could not harm. Yet, as thousands of wave beasts began to die, the stronger creatures in the horde soon noticed it, and all turned their gaze toward the Godslayer human in the sky. Kane's eyes narrowed as he turned to the Shah where the truly powerful beasts were located and detected the presence of several powerful Grand King beasts. He could choose to move away, improving his kill count with wave champion beasts, but that was not his style. The red light in his eyes burst with even greater power as he stopped containing his astral wave, allowing the energy full of vitality and power to flood his flesh and blood, increasing his physical power as he extended his right hand, making slaughter appear.
Boomer.
An explosive burst of energy came from Kane as sky blue and dark purple energy flooded from his body. Next, grand blood runes covered his legs, left arm, and Slaughter's blade. The blood rune art pushed his battle power to the peak of the middle apotheosis realm, but he was far from over as the power of blood energy and space force enhanced the weapon's power to an even higher degree. All the Grand King beasts felt the immense power emanating from the Godslayer human, but a sense of hunger overcame their fear as they were sure that if they could devour Kane, they would evolve beyond the limit of their current power. Continue your saga on Freeweb novel.
Roar.
Several Raws emerged from the Shah as all those Grand King beasts rose to the sky and flashed toward Kane with their maws open wide as if they hoped to swallow the human whole. Kane showed a fierce smile as he circulated his blood energy, astral path, across his body, triggering the Biomtal Herculean technique's full power, flashing toward the Grand King beasts as he continued their massacre of the weaker wave beasts. The Grand King beast that managed to take the lead was a massive shark-like creature with sharp metallic scales all over its body and a silver aura that made it seem it could cut the sky. The beast lunged toward Kane and wanted to sever him in half before eating the pieces. Kane felt the sharp energy that covered every corner of the Grand King beast, but he just smiled as the red light in his eyes burst with power. Now that he had reached the late apotheosis realm regarding willpower, he no longer needed to overexert himself to summon the power of concepts.
ZNNNNNNN.
The sound of air splitting in half echoed across the sky as Cain and the Silver Edge Shark reached each other, and blood soon rained as the Grand King Beast was split in half. Cain's cutting power reached an overwhelming level when the Grand Blood Runes and the Sundering concept enhanced quantum laceration. Of course, finding the precise angle to slash without getting harmed was complex, but the flow made everything much more straightforward. However, Cain could not lose focus or get too happy, as another Grand King Beast took the chance he had just finished its attack to send its maws toward him. The Grand King Beast resembled a massive sea turtle, and the force behind its maws was immense, capable of shattering mountains. However, Cain had already caught the glutton turtle's presence with his ego wave and twisted his body using the law of space to dodge the maws at the last second. Just after dodging those massive maws, Cain clenched his left arm and fired a punch toward the glutton turtle's neck, using the power of the Grand Blood Rune to destroy the neck of this one before landing a kick and sending the badly wounded beast flying away. Cain had just taken care of the glutton turtle when his eyes narrowed as another two Grand King Beasts spat a river of poisonous ink and acid in his direction. Dodging those attacks would have been impossible even with the law of space, but his smile did not fade.
Thumpy.
The sound of a powerful heartbeat echoed just as the poisonous ink and acid clashed with each other, melting everything between them. The shellback sea dragon and the poison octopus saw how their attack landed, and both expected to see a burned body the next second.
ZNNNN.
However, the only thing that happened was the sound of a blade severing the neck of the shellback sea dragon. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 513, Divine Beast. Shock and horror appeared in the poison octopus as it turned to its dead comrade, but the only thing it saw was a red flash.
ZNNNN.
And the next second, a blade pierced its eye socket, flooding its brain with Grand Blood Runes that shredded its brain to mush. Find exclusive stories on Freeweb Novel. Cain pulled Slaughter out of the creature's eye and stood still. His heartbeat was beating like crazy, and the blood wings on his back were vibrating at an overwhelming speed. The combination of Usura Farm, Blood Wing, and the law of space allowed Cain to dodge the acid and poison and kill both beasts before they could even react.
Boom.
The crashing sound that made the ground tremble was the halves of the Silver Edge Shark finally reaching the ground. Cain had killed all 4 Grand King Beasts before the corpse of the first one had even landed. Cain's eyes grew sharp as he took a moment to sense the blood of all the Grand King Beasts and harmonize with them through the law of blood. Since there was so much vitality, he might as well use it to form bloodthirsty runes.
Alright.
Of course, the Horde would not just sit back and wait as Cain trained, and Raws echoed as dozens of late and peak King Beasts marched toward him, with Grand King Beasts making their way from the distance and some emerged from the very ocean. The Blood Nails kept the weaker wave beasts at bay, but for the stronger ones, Cain would be the one to take care of them. Cain detected the beasts marching toward him and took a deep breath as he deactivated third gear, leaving only second gear active. Although the improvement was not as significant, he could maintain that state for hours without a problem.
ZNNNN.
A peak king beast with the form of a sea lion lunged toward Cain, but he just stepped to the side, dodging the beast before waving his blade and splitting it in half. He did all that while focusing on the blood filled with vitality on the ground and trying to form bloodthirsty runes.
ZNNN.
Not even 5 seconds after the sea lion's death, another late king beast attacked Cain and suffered the same fate.
ZNNNN. ZNNNN. ZNNNN.
Minutes began to pass, and the number of corpses that appeared on the ground beneath Cain soon formed a mountain. He would move just a step before sending a strike with Slaughter to kill the king beasts and would only break his focus for a second when facing Grand King Beasts. Within an hour of Cain's arrival, he had crushed hundreds of king beasts and left dozens of Grand King Beasts dead in his wake. As for wave champion beasts and normal wave beasts, Cain did not even bother to count them, but by the rivers of blood that covered the ground, It must have been tens of thousands by this point. Cain barely moved from his location in the sky, allowing the wave beasts to march toward him as he kept improving his domain over the bloodthirst runes. However, suddenly, his eyes widened, and his instincts screamed danger. An explosive sound echoed from inside the ocean, and the next second, a figure flashed out of it with such movement and speed that it pushed the waves back. Cain immediately made his energy explode and grabbed Slaughter with both hands as he triggered third gear and twisted his body, using the full power of his talk as he struck the figure that flashed toward him. Cain's Slaughter clashed head-on with an over 500-meter creature that seemed to be the hybrid between a bullfrog and a dragon bathed in blue lightning. The Godslayer human and wave beast managed to maintain the clash for a second before Cain was sent hurtling away while puking blood and crashing against a mountain thousands of meters away. Cain crashed with the mountain with so much power that it pulverized it, yet he emerged from the debris the next second. Blood was all over his body, but the wounds soon healed as bright golden flames emerged from his alter ego. He showed no care for the damage as his eyes focused solely on the creature that clashed with him with such power and momentum that he felt a meteorite had crashed into him.
A divine beast.
The bullfrog, which seemed to contain the bloodline of a lightning dragon and managed to send Cain flying away while puking blood, was a beast that had crossed into the divine ranks. Although a divine wave beast was weaker than their counterparts with sacred organs, they could still harness the power of their souls, and they were usually more than powerful enough to kill peak apotheosis masters. As one would expect from such a creature, it had developed a great sense of wisdom, which was why it was so shocked to see that the Godslayer human it attacked by surprise could still stand. Not only that, but the clash left a scar on its diamond-encrusted head. The divine beast took Cain's survival as a personal insult, and burning rage appeared in its eyes, but its body trembled for a second as an expression of pain assaulted it. Cain's eyes narrowed as he saw that and knew his attack was not responsible. As he focused on the beast with his ego wave, he was surprised to see signs of old wounds that had yet to close, along with a strange feeling in the beast's life force as if it was in disarray. It was poisoned. For a poison to remain this long and have such an effect on a divine beast, despite their overwhelming vitality and immune system, the most likely perpetrator must have been a divine ascension master. Cain knew that divine ascension masters from the Deus Behemoth Empire were sent to all coastal cities to take care of the first wave of the horde emerging from the ocean, and this Draco lightning frog must have been one of the beasts that clashed with them. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 514, Godslayer Human vs. Divine Beast. If the Divine Beast were at full power, Cain would not have hesitated even a second before running away, since he was not so arrogant as to think he could overcome a creature that could kill peak apotheosis masters. There was no point in risking his life if there was no chance of winning. Besides, he had already killed a copious amount of wave beasts. However, things were different if the Divine Beast was wounded and poisoned, leaving its vitality and energy in a state of disarray. Cain's eyes burst with red light as he pointed Slaughter toward the Draco lightning frog, and soon, all the blood left from the corpses of the grand king beasts began to flow toward him. The divine beast had zero domain over the complicated principles of the laws, so it only saw how rivers of blood coalesced around the blade before concentrating into a small, shining blood rune. Although the other runes were powerful, none could compare with the cutting power and the dangerous feeling the shining blood rune generated in the divine beast. However, despite being a creature in the divine rank, it was still a slave to its instincts. So when it saw the fighting will in the human's eyes, killing intent burst from every cell of its gargantuan body. The divine beast and the Godslayer human rod as they expressed the fighting will inside their hearts and flashed toward each other, ready to use everything they had to kill the other. One bathed in blue lightning and the other in bright and dark golden flames. An explosion that made the sky tremble and generated a tornado of destructive energy emerged as Cain's blade and the Draco lightning frog's claw clashed, one of them covered in lightning and the other in a trinity of blood energy, space phos, and blood runes. Cain's arms did not stop trembling, and he felt the muscle fibers in his arms tearing apart. But he clenched his teeth and resisted the immense force that threatened to push him away, using everything he had in this clash. In the end, Cain was still sent flying away, but so was the gargantuan body of the Draco lightning frog. Although the Godslayer human was hurtled for thousands of meters and the divine beast for just a few hundred, that clash was enough to tell Cain one thing: I can fight it. The eyes of the young man burst with red light as a fierce smile appeared on his face, and he regained control over his body as he flashed back into the fray. The divine beast was also surprised to see that a humanoid not using his soul force could match it, but there was a gift in the simplicity of its mind. It stopped caring, and the only thought left in its mind was to kill the man and eat his flesh. A small golden flash of light and a gargantuan mass of lightning clashed in the sky over and over again, generating enormous shock waves that pushed everything away, shattering the ground beneath their feet and making the sky tremble with their power. None of them could overcome the other, and due to this, the fight turned into a battle of attrition, seeing who would collapse first. Cain's plan was simple. He would worsen the divine beast's state until the poison it was suppressing flared up, and he would use that chance to land a finishing blow. As for the Draco lightning frog, its plan was also not very complicated, as it intended to drain the enemy's energy and then kill him when this one was weakened.
Boom. Boom. Boom.
The explosions in the sky had already destroyed everything on the ground other than the massive lightning tree. All the wave beasts had either escaped or were dead, and the only ones fighting were a small human not over 2 meters tall and a massive beast more than 500 meters tall. The battle had been going on for over 10 hours already. It had reached such a massive scale that blood energy, spatial distortion, and lightning flooded the surroundings for several hundred kilometers. Cain's breathing was rough, and there were wounds all over his body, yet he managed to reach homeostasis and prevent the bleeding thanks to his mastery over the law of blood. As for radiance of life and radiance of strength, both had already faded several hours ago. Read new chapters at FreeWebNovel. The condition of the Draco lightning frog was not much better. While the wounds on its body were not as severe as those on Cain, every time it was wounded, it became a little harder to suppress the dangerous poison that had infected its flesh and blood. Despite their wounds, neither of them showed any sign of giving up, and their killing intent only grew stronger. Cain had just flashed toward the divine beast, moving to the side at the last second to dodge the claw before roaring with all his strength, hacking into the beast's side.
Oh, ZNNNN.
The sound of a human raw and flesh being severed at a molecular level echoed as Cain left a massive cut on the left side of the Draco lightning frog. But just as he was about to smile, his eyes narrowed. The flow showed him how the divine beast's tail was about to clash with him the next second. Despite seeing the attack before it happened, he was too weak and in a bad position to dodge it, so he could only turn his body, using his back as a shield and gathering every ounce of his astral wave and essence wave in it. An explosion as loud as that generated by a nuclear blast echoed as the divine beast's lightning tail clashed with Cain's body, sending him crashing into the ground and generating a massive crater. Cain was just rising from the ground when he heard a blast near him and saw how the Draco lightning frog descended from the sky and opened its maws as a gigantic amount of lightning emerged from its body's caw. The divine beast had decided to unleash its most potent attack, despite this one not only draining all its energy, but also triggering its old wounds, as the fight had reached the point where it began to fear for its life.
Boom.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 515, Killing a Divine Beast.
Boom.
Cain had just emerged from the crater when a giant sphere of lightning emerged from the Draco lightning frog's maws, flashing toward him at immense speed with even more formidable power. The Draco lightning frog had used this attack multiple times before, and it could push back even those humanoids that used the power of their souls. That was why it was so shocked as it saw how the sphere of lightning changed direction just as it was about to land on the human. Discover hidden stories at Freeweb Novel.
Thumpy.
Before the beast could get over the shock, a powerful heartbeat echoed across the sky as Cain appeared above the divine beast's head with his body reddened and a fierce expression on his face. The Draco lightning frog wanted to move, but poison flowing through its veins paralyzed its body, so it was not able to do anything as the human hacked with all his power at the top of its skull, generating arcs of energy that reached its brain. After that attack, Cain's body lost all its power, and the young man fell on top of the beast, which continued trembling as its brain was severed in half and its soul destroyed. Cain could not move his body, but a radiant smile was on his face as he had managed to do the impossible and kill a divine beast.
Rumbles.
The sound of steps soon appeared in the distance, and he knew that now that the battle was over and the presence of the divine beast had vanished, the other wave beasts would march toward them. Even though he could not move, Cain did not care about the horde. Using what little strength he had, he sent the cops into a space ring. The horde marching toward them saw the massive body of the divine beast vanish, and their eyes turned to the human. But before they could get closer, the sunlight orb triggered its effect on its own, covering Cain's body with sunlight and raising him into the sky before sending his figure back to the Solis clan's sacred home. Figures covered in sunlight reached the platform in the center of the Solis clan's sacred home. As the energy faded, everybody could see the deteriorated state of the contestants. All of them had wounds all over their bodies, but despite that, their vibrant bloodlines and life force allowed them to stand straight and with their heads up. 9 contestants reached the platform, and different expressions could be seen on their faces as they looked at each other. Some were fully confident in their chance of victory, while others showed complicated expressions, unsure if they had done enough to qualify for the next round. Finally, the last beam of sunlight reached the platform, and all of them saw the bloody figure of Cain on the ground, so weak and wounded that he could not even stand up. The Godslayer human had shown incredible speed and reflexes during the last contest. Yet now, while they managed to stand straight, this one was barely conscious on the ground and bleeding from every corner of his body. Several people looked at Cain's bloody figure from a distance, be it the people of the Solis clan or the families of the 10 contestants, all began to whisper among each other.
HMPH, the first trial was just a fluke. Look at him, he can't even stand up. It seems that the geniuses of the Godslayer humankind cannot match up to even those that came outside the 10 great bloodlines. I guess we were expecting too much from him.
Cain could hear all those voices, but showed little care as he saw a red figure appear next to him the next second, putting a hand over his chest before waves of blood, energy flooded his body and helped him heal his wounds. Lord Zanguines was surprised to see Cain's state, especially since he knew the strength of this one, but he did not bother with questions and focused on helping the young man heal. Once Cain's wounds were better, and he could finally rise from the ground, the patriarch of the Zanguines clan gave the young man a soft nod before turning his gaze toward Lord Kabuto with a frown.
It doesn't matter.
Cain only uttered those words as he saw the way in which Lord Zanguines was looking at the patriarch of the Solis clan. While it was true he was sent to a very dangerous place, the reason for his wounds was his own decision as he chose to clash against a divine beast. He took a deep breath and cleaned his body from the blood before taking his place alongside the rest of the contestants. Lord Zanguines' eyes narrowed as he saw that, and he softly nodded before rising into the sky. But this time, he did not sit along with the people of the Solis clan and stood alone, clearly showing his annoyance with Lord Kabuto's bias against Cain. Lord Kabuto saw the annoyance in his old friend's eyes, but even though that disturbed him, right now, there was something much more important on his mind, something that involved the fate of the entire Hyperion continent. He now returns covered completely in blood, a red body. Every time Lord Kabuto turned to Cain, he saw the color red following him, which made the turmoil in his mind and soul grow stronger. The old man's willpower burst as he seized back control of his emotions and took a deep breath before focusing on the people on the platform and speaking in a solemn voice.
It is time to see just how many wave beasts you managed to kill during this stage. The top 5 will gain the right to pass to the last stage and fight for the chance to gain my bloodline.
Shortly after Lord Kabuto uttered those words, the contestant in the far left place began to glow, and fiery letters appeared above his head. Minus 4,640 wave beasts. Minus 799 wave champion beasts. King beasts. Minus 2 grand king beasts. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 516, Nearly a Million. People saw with surprise and awe as they read those numbers, since the man who achieved such a feat was only a middle wave king, not even 50 years old. Yet, he managed to kill over 30 king beasts, and even more shockingly, he slew 2 grand king beasts. When the other contestants saw those numbers, some frowned while others showed radiant smiles. Of course, the ones that frowned had lower scars, while the smiling ones were above. The sunlight soon covered the body of the next contestant, a Deus behemoth with shark-like characteristics, showing his numbers. Minus 5,420 wave beasts. Minus 874 wave champion beasts. Minus 35 king beasts. While those numbers were impressive, and he surpassed his competitor in all 3 categories, it was clear that the value of 2 grand king beasts was much more significant, so he could only sigh. Like that, the sunlight passed from one person to the other, and there was not much shock until it reached Kylon, the man with golden wings and eagle-like eyes. Minus 8,420 wave beasts. Minus 1,274 wave champion beasts. King beasts. Grand king beasts. Kylon's numbers were not that unique in terms of wave beasts, wave champion beasts, or king beasts, but when they saw the double digits in terms of grand king beasts, it was clear to all that the man had focused his power on the great enemies. There was a radiant smile on the man's face as he saw how people looked at him, but his eyes soon narrowed with fighting will as he saw the sunlight covering Sulon. Minus 7,941 wave beasts. Minus 974 wave champion beasts. Minus 71 king beasts. Grand king beasts. Sulon did not remain too far behind, having ended the lives of 12 grand king beasts. Just as the people of the Solis clan and the other powerhouses watching the tournament were surprised by the feats of the duo, their eyes widened as they saw the numbers that appeared for the young man with wolf-like features. Minus 4,952 wave beasts. Minus 364 wave champion beasts. King beasts. Minus 15 grand king beasts. Among the people watching from the sky was none other than Artemis, and the woman could not help but smile as she saw the numbers above her little brother. Fania, the young man with wolf-like features and who mastered the law of space, smiled. Although his numbers in terms of wave beasts and wave champion beasts were average, what truly mattered were the last 2, and in those, he managed to surpass all. Even though I could not use the spatial rift grotto before the tournament, my space assassin technique allowed me to excel in this trial. The young Deus behemoth showed a smile full of pride as he raised his head and looked at the man to the right with disdain. HMPH, you were barely able to survive the 12 hours. I would be shocked if you managed to kill more than 10 king beasts. Fania did not hide his disdain as he glanced at Cain, clearly bothered by having his time in the spatial rift grotto taken. He saw how the sunlight covered Cain and glanced at the space above him with a mocking smile. Not only Fania focused on Cain, since nearly everybody turned their eyes toward him, not because they were expecting to see much. He was just a novelty, and they were curious about how many wave beasts he had killed despite being in such a deplorable state when he reached the platform. Soon, the sunlight materialized above Cain's head, and the first numbers that appeared left everybody in a state of silence. Wave beasts. People could not believe what they were seeing. Even if wave beasts were weak and a wave king could kill hundreds with a single strike, to have a number that neared the million was simply too much. Actually, Cain was also a little surprised to see that number. He had used blood nails to kill the weaker beasts, but did not really count them, and once the divine beast came into play, he sent the holy weapon back to his heart as he could no longer bother with them. The sunlight sphere must have counted the wave beasts that perished due to the collateral damage from my fight, with the Draco lightning frog as my kills. It made sense that the number of wave beasts dying reached such a shocking level, since every time Cain and the divine beast clashed, they unleashed explosions that matched those of nuclear weapons.
HMPH, he must have run away from the most powerful beasts and focused only on the minions.
Cain heard that voice coming from the sky and saw that the one shouting was none other than Artemis. The woman had a bad impression of him, but he simply ignored her, not caring about her thoughts or those of the people who nodded to her. Just after Artemis shouted those malicious words, her eyes widened as she saw the number of wave champion beasts killed by Cain. -35, 195 wave champion beasts. The number of wave champion beasts was not as exaggerated as that of wave beasts, since they could endure the shockwaves of Cain and the divine beasts' clashes as long as they were not near the car. But still, seeing the number reach over 30,000 shocked everybody. This time, no one dared to utter a word, as they did not want to make themselves a fool like Artemis, and quietly waited for the number that marked the king beasts. Deep down, most of them expected that Cain had focused on the weaker beasts, as that would at least make sense of such a gigantic number, but they were out of luck. -934 king beasts. The number of king beasts did not reach 1,000 since those were only the ones he killed in the first hour. After all, once Cain's battle with the divine beast began, all those beasts ran away. Nevertheless, it still left everybody with a sense of utter dumbfoundedness. There was no doubt now that Cain had not focused on the wave beasts and wave champion beasts, and most likely, he had not even paid attention to them. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 517, The Final Trial. -84 Grand King Beasts. Finally, the number of Grand King Beasts came up again, leaving everybody in utter dumbfoundedness. Not even if they combined the kills of all the other contestants could they match Cain's. Lord Kabuto's eyes burned with golden light as he saw those numbers and the feeling in his heart. Could it be? The old man did all in his power to keep focused, and was about to speak when he saw that the sunlight had not finished, and one more line of flaming words appeared. -1 divine beast. Silence, absolute and definite, covered the Solis clan's sacred home as they saw that number. It was just one, but it meant more than every other mark combined, since it meant that the Godslayer human had killed a creature in the divine realm.
Cheat, he must have cheated.
Fania could not contain the emotional distress in his heart when he saw that final number and shouted. Yet, he soon saw how everybody looked at him as if he were a clown. The one that marked the number of kills was Lord Kabuto's sunlight sphere. If the human had managed to trick it, it meant that Cain could trick the ego wave of a late divine ascension master. That would be even more amazing than killing a divine beast. Cain glanced at the Deus Behemoth and simply shook his head as he saw the weak mentality of this one. His gaze did turn to the patriarch of the Solis clan, whose eyes had burst with golden flames as it seemed he was unleashing the full might of his willpower. Lord Kabuto had been acting strange since the moment he appeared, and right now, Cain saw that other than shock, there was something else in the eyes of the old man, something that he could not quite figure out.
Ha 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 ha. Did I not tell all of you that the tournament winner was already clear? Just watch the level of might that this brat can unleash.
Lord Zangine's laughter broke the tense and solemn atmosphere that covered the city as the man did not bother to hide his thrill. Lord Kabuto overcame the emotional shock that assaulted him by that point and took a deep breath.
Kylo, Sulon, Fania, Laurind, and Cain, you 5 remain on the platform, the others leave.
The contestants heard those words, and the 5 whose names were not mentioned could only sigh as they exited the platform. However, the other 4 remaining Deus Behemoth warriors did not have expressions full of joy as they all turned to the Godslayer human with complicated expressions. How were they supposed to overcome the young man who managed to kill nearly 100 grand king beasts and a divine beast?
You five have 10 minutes to recover. After that, a battle royal will begin, and the last one standing will win.
Just as the people wondered what the subsequent trial would be, they heard those words and were shocked. The tournament was supposed to last an entire month, yet Lord Cabuto declared that the winner would emerge from the next fight. A flash of fighting will appear in the eyes of the Deus Behemoths, as that was excellent news for them. None was confident in their chances against the Godslayer human, but things would be different if they worked together. That was especially true since Cain had not had time to completely recover, as Lord Zanguinez's energy only stabilized his wounds.
Cabuto.
Not even a second after Cabuto stated the rules of the last contest, Lord Zanguini's voice echoed with so much strength that it resembled the roar of a mythological beast. There was a flash of rage in the old man's eyes as he saw the level of bias being displayed against Cain. Cabuto's eyes narrowed as he gazed at Lord Zanguini's, but maintained a stern expression and watched over the contestants.
It is fine.
Before things could escalate, Lord Zanguini's heard Cain's voice. He saw how the human looked at him with a smile before adopting a meditative position on the ground, only for golden flames full of bursting vitality to spread across his body the next second. Thanks to the few minutes of rest, Cain's ego wave had regained some of its power, and he was able to conjure radiance of life, improving his body condition as he waited with his eyes closed. When the Deus Behemoths on the platform saw how Cain's body began to heal, they all immediately adopted a square formation around him as they began circulating their energy, trying to regain as much power as possible during the next 10 minutes. Silence returned as everybody waited to see what would happen. Although the 4 Deus Behemoths would work together, no one knew how things could come out since they would face a young man capable of killing a divine beast. No matter how weak and tired Cain was, underestimating him would surely be a deadly mistake. Lord Cabuto did not utter a single word, and his eyes could not leave Cain's figure as he counted every second until he finally raised his hand and lowered it down.
Begin. Boom. 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 Boom.
The signal had barely appeared when the 4 Deus Behemoths made their astral wave burst with all their power as they flashed toward Cain, ready to use everything they had. Everybody's eyes were on this battle, since they wanted to see just what type of skills the Godslayer human capable of killing a divine beast could unleash. Kylo, Sulon, Fania, and Lauren were using everything they had as they unleashed their strongest attacks against Cain, not containing themselves in the least. They were not trying to kill the Godslayer human since they were sure Lord Cabuto or another powerhouse would intervene. Besides, their instincts told them that if they contained themselves in the slightest, they would definitely lose. Just as the 4 Deus Behemoths were about to reach 10 meters away from Cain and unleash their attack, he opened his eyes, and a red force field covered the platform in a fraction of a second. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 518, Prophecy I.
Thumpy. 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 Thumpy.
The sound of 4 bodies falling to the ground echoed as the red force field vanished, and the only person conscious on the platform was Cain. Once again, a sense of utter shock assaulted the people watching the young man as they saw how he managed to overcome the mental defenses of the 4 Deus Behemoths, hypnotizing them and leaving them unconscious. Although it was shocking and left everybody with a sense of complete shock and wonder, there was one truth no one could deny. The Godslayer human defeated the 4 Deus Behemoths without moving a single finger. Cain stared at the unconscious Deus Behemoths without any emotion. The 4 were powerful and talented, but they were too young, and their wills were not strong enough, so they succumbed to his ego wave in a second. After that, he stood up, and with emotionless eyes, he focused on the patriarch of the Solis clan.
I won.
2 words, but the intent behind them was overwhelming as Cain glanced at one of the patriarchs of the 10 great bloodlines, a true titan of the Deus Behemoth Empire. The next second, Everybody turned to Lord Kabuto, and they could see the sense of shock in his eyes. The old man could not even say a word as he stared at Cain with eyes that seemed to be lost. It took several seconds for him to finally regain focus, and only then did the patriarch of the Solis clan speak.
I cannot simply give you my bloodline.
Cain's eyes narrowed, but he was not surprised. The old man had shown bias against him from the start, so he was not surprised this one did not keep his word. As for expecting that age and seniority would make someone honorable, only a fool would believe those things. The people looking from a distance could not help but show complicated expressions. Although they were not happy about the defeat of the Deus behemoths, the fact that Lord Kabuto showed such deplorable behavior to a member of another race only made their empire look bad. Even the members of the Solis clan could not help but frown as they heard those words. Although they were not happy about their bloodline being handed to an outsider, they had accepted the tournament, yet now Lord Kabuto was negating the rightful winner their reward. If people were to hear about this, how long would it be before the Solis clan became the laughingstock?
Enough, brat, let's go.
Lord Zanguines shouted as he appeared beside Cain, and there was a disappointed expression on his face as he stared at his old friend. Cain was not going to argue or lose his calm. He simply nodded to Lord Zanguines as there was no point in remaining here.
Wait, you did not let me finish.
Just as Lord Zanguines was about to take Cain back to the Zanguines clan's sacred home, Lord Kabuto shouted.
Of course you will get my bloodline. However, that is not enough. You must also accept the role of the Solis clan's son avatar and take me as your foster father.
Cain's eyes twitched as he heard those words since he did not understand what this old man was saying. At first, it looked like he wanted nothing more than to make him fail, yet now he wanted him to become his foster son. He was not the only one shocked. Everybody else was confused, especially the people of the Solis clan, since those titles were not empty and would give the Godslayer human a role that would only be second to the Divine Ascension Masters. And things were not even done, since Lord Kabuto's eyes glowed with a meaningful light as he spoke again.
Oh, you must take one of the Solis clan's divine daughters as your concubine. If you want more than one, it is fine.
Cain immediately took 2 steps back as he heard those words and saw the zeal in the eyes of the old man. The way he acted was as if he wanted nothing more than for him to become a member of the Solis clan, regardless of the cost. When Lord Kabuto saw how Cain put some distance as he mentioned the part about the concubines, he frowned.
What, are you afraid of women? You are supposed to be a man and should be bringing children to this world already. Enough, everybody who is not a member of the Solis clan, leave now.
Lord Zanguines noticed the state of his old friend's mind and immediately shouted. Although the people from other clans were full of confusion and curiosity, none of them dared to defy the words of the patriarch of the Zanguines clan and left. Once they were alone, Lord Zanguines' eyes glowed with powerful will as he used the pressure of his willpower to force his old friend to focus. Lord Kabuto frowned as he felt the pressure, but soon the zeal in his eyes faded and he regained his calm demeanor. He took a deep breath and clasped his hand to Lord Zanguines.
Thanks for that.
After thanking his old friend, Lord Kabuto turned toward Cain, who kept looking at him as if he were crazy, and he showed a complicated smile.
Young man, please accompany me. I will answer your doubts in private. Wildebeest, you can accompany us.
Lord Kabuto saw the caution in Cain's eyes and didn't blame the young man, as his behavior had truly been strange. This was why he proposed for Lord Zanguines to accompany them. Cain was indeed cautious of the old man, but turned toward Lord Zanguines, who softly nodded. Stay tuned for updates on Freeweb Novel.
He might be a madman, but he is a good man. You should hear him out.
Cain glanced at Lord Zanguines and then turned toward Lord Kabuto before nodding. He was also curious about the old man's strange behavior and wanted answers. After getting Cain's nod, Lord Kabuto turned to the 2 Divine Ascension Masters from the Solis clan.
Keep order for the time being. I will explain later.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 519, Prophecy Although the Jew was as confused as everyone else by their patriarch's strange behavior, they understood that seers were unusual people and nodded before guiding all the people who came to see the tournament back to their homes. Lord Cabuto, Lord Zanguines, and Cain rose to the sky and headed to a castle embedded inside the golden tree, soon reaching a majestic throne room that belonged to the patriarch of the Solis clan. Lord Cabuto did not sit on the throne, but waved his hand, making 3 seats appear before signaling Cain and Lord Zanguines to sit.
Darkness, absolute darkness that spread from the Chronos continent into the Hyperion continent, bringing the death of not just men, women, and children from the Deus Behemoth Empire, but also of every sentient life form. Even divine beings that could sunder the heavens could do nothing but succumb to the power of such might. It consumed all life, leaving only silence in its path.
Cain and Lord Zanguines could not help but frown as they heard those words, and saw the immense terror in the eyes of the patriarch of the Solis clan. It was so much that it seemed it had haunted him to the point of crippling his mind.
Normally, my visions present themselves as dreams, and I would be lucky if I can remember even 10% of it, and even then it is all foggy. But this time is different. I saw the darkness as clearly as I can see you, and it has haunted me every single day for the last year.
Lord Cabuto did not bother to hide his fear, since even if he wanted, he could not do it, as the memory of that darkness was too much. But then he turned toward Cain, and a flash of courage and hope appeared.
The vision remained the same until 3 months ago. The darkness flooded from the Chronos continent, but this time something happened.
Experience Tales at Freeweb Novel.
Did you see me?
Cain's eyes narrowed as he asked that question. He could see the fear in the man's eyes and did not doubt that he saw darkness every day, which could explain the state of his mind. However, Cain would not believe Lord Cabuto if the old man said he appeared in the vision. Lord Cabuto smiled as he softly shook his head.
I did not see you. What I saw was a red light that clashed with the darkness. It fought against it with a power that sundered the heavens in half. I have looked everywhere for the source of the red light, and now you show up.
Lord Zanguines was surprised to hear those words and turned toward Cain. Although the vision did not show the Godslayer human, he was indeed the most likely suspect. Cain also had to admit that the clues pointed at him, going to the point that the appearance of the red light in Lord Cabuto's vision correlated with his arrival in the Hyperion continent. He took a moment as he stared at the old man before speaking.
Your behavior in the tournament, you were trying to test me.
Lord Cabuto showed a complicated expression as he heard that and performed a bow toward Cain. His position in the Deus Behemoth Empire was second only to the Emperor, yet he performed a bow to a young man from a different race. Such a sight would shock everybody.
I am sorry for that. My mind was in complete disarray, and if you were the source of the red light, then you needed to be capable of the impossible. I admit my approach was flawed and childish, and I can only hope you forgive this old man and take it as an attack of senility.
Cain could not help but sigh as he saw the old man bow and use his hand to help him stand up. He did not bother people if they were willing to admit their mistakes. Besides, it did not feel good to have someone thousands of years old bowing to him.
I understand. Let's make it as if nothing happened. Ha ha ha, you really are a good brat.
Lord Zanguines laughed as he patted Cain's back and smiled as he saw that the young man did not make things hard for his friend. Lord Cabuto was not as exaggerated as Lord Zanguines, but he also smiled and nodded to Cain in appreciation for not making things more complicated for him. He then took a deep breath, and a solemn expression appeared on his face as he glanced at the duo before him.
I don't know the origin of that darkness or when it will attack, but I am sure you will play a crucial role in the survival of our empire.
Cain and Lord Zanguines could see the solemnity in the old man, and they adopted severe expressions, but even then, they showed complicated expressions. Even if they knew the man was a seer and all the clues pointed to Cain being the source of the red light, it was not something they could reveal. For one, many people in the Deus Behemoth Empire would not take that prophecy well since, even if a great danger loomed, the idea that someone from a different continent and race would save them was insulting, especially if the man was not even 19 years old. Not to mention that the force behind the darkness, whatever or whoever it might be, would use their full power to kill Cain if they were to find out about it. Cain was strong, but if the vision was true, that darkness could erase an entire civilization with hundreds of titans and several beings with a battle power above the divine ascension realm. Appearing on their radar now that he could barely face a divine beast would be the same as asking to die.
I take it that the whole point of the Sun Avatar and becoming your foster son is to improve my connection to your clan and the Deus Behemoth Empire, so when the time comes, I will be by your side facing that darkness.
Lord Kabuto smiled with embarrassment as he remembered all those words before nodding.
Haha, sorry, I went over the line a little back then, but do not discard it as the offer is still on the table and the gains will be amazing.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 520, Bloodline Heritage, I. Cain couldn't help but show a complicated expression as he saw the way in which Lord Kabuto looked at him. The man's offer was indeed amazing, and the titles of Son Avatar and Foster Son of the Patriarch of the Solis clan were statuses that anyone in the Deus Behemoth Empire would give their right arm to attain, but it was not so simple. For one, after embracing Otta, Cain could not easily develop an emotional attachment to a person, especially if he knew a goal was behind that relationship. Of course, the fact that Lord Kabuto sought to bind him by goodwill and his goal was to protect his race, which was an ally of Godslayer humankind, factored in Cain's decision, but still, he was not so keen on accepting it.
A bloodline with your power would indeed be beneficial to me, and I will honor the titles I earn, but the thing about a concubine is not something I can accept.
Titles and even a bloodline could bind Cain to a certain point, but attaining a concubine was not something he was very eager to do. After all, the goal of such a relationship would be a child. That was the type of soft spot that Cain would not accept, or at least not before reaching the peak of ether. Read New Adventures at Freeweb Novel.
Why are you so prude? At your age I already had 3 wives.
Lord Kabuto immediately reacted, but this time there was no chaos or confusion in his mind. He spoke as an older man trying to guide the younger generation, and the patriarch of the Solis clan was not alone.
The madman is right, brat. You are young and virile, yet you have no one by your side nor descendants on the way. People might start thinking that your thing doesn't work correctly.
Lord Zanguini's showed a solemn expression as he uttered those words. He acted as if he was only looking out for Cain's well-being.
It is as Wildebeest says, and it is not just about your reputation. If you do nothing, people might think that Godslayer humans' virility is weak.
A truly strange and bizarre scene appeared as esteemed patriarchs of 2 of the 10 great bloodlines began to advise Cain, both hinting that the young man should go ahead, bed all the women he could, and make as many children as possible during his stay in the Hyperion continent. All in the name of his reputation and that of all Godslayer humans. Cain didn't really know how to behave in such a situation, but he did not get angry since he understood that the duo would have done this even if the prophecy of the darkness and red light had not appeared. After all, it was common in the Deus Behemoth culture to want powerful bloodlines to assimilate into their clans. Actually, for the Deus Behemoth race, relationships did not really need a romantic component. If it was present, all the better, but most of them were done with the goal of propagating their bloodline and siring more children. Cain's talent and power were already off the charts, and it made sense that the Jew would want his descendants in their families. Of course, if not for the prophecy, they would not have been so eager, and the patriarch of the Solis family would not have offered the proud daughter of the clan as concubines but wives.
Enough. I already have a partner on Gaia, and while I do not refrain from engaging in new romantic relationships, I will not have a child when an apocalypse-like event is looming over my head. I cannot afford such a distraction.
Lord Kabuto and Lord Zanguini's saw the seriousness in Cain's face, and the duo could only give up as they understood that they could not change his mind. Besides, his reason made perfect sense, as it would be irresponsible to distract himself with a son when he was at the apex of his cultivation time.
Fine, it is your choice. However, you say you were fine with my bloodline and titles, and Wildebeest is our witness. We will have a ceremony to make it official, but I should pass my bloodline to you now.
Lord Cabuto immediately carried on, ensuring Cain would attain his bloodline as if he feared the young man would back down. Cain, on the other hand, could only shrug his shoulders. Since it would provide him with great help, there was no reason to refuse. As for the idea of saving the continent in the future, he would have done that even if Lord Cabuto had not assisted him, since he had friends in this place. Not to mention, he was a member of the Godslayer Imperial Army, which would obviously help an ally in case of need.
Great, then there is nothing stopping us from carrying on with the bloodline heritage.
At this point, Lord Cabuto paused and stared at Cain with a complicated expression.
The transfer of my bloodline will put immense stress on your body, especially your heart, making the process incredibly painful and dangerous since your rebirth heart is crippled.
Cain knew that Lord Cabuto was not making an excuse, and the process would indeed generate immense pressure on his circulatory system. Nevertheless, his rebirth heart had already healed long ago, so there would not be a problem.
There is no need to worry. My Empyrean Sun visualization technique has a formidable healing ability, so I should be fine. Brat, you should not underestimate the pressure of a bloodline heritage. Besides, even if you follow the essence evolution path, your body is not something you can neglect, as it could have a detrimental effect in the future. Remember that the laws will be engraved in your flesh in the future.
Lord Zanguini spoke solemnly, and there was a flash of concern in his eyes as he understood the danger the bloodline heritage would pose to Cain. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 521, Bloodline Heritage, I.
Moon, we should fix your rebirth heart before carrying on with the process.
Lord Cabuto showed solemn expression as he uttered those words, and before Cain could say anything, Lord Zanguini's chimed in.
Madman is right. I actually have a treasure that could help you. It's extremely expensive, but since you will be the hero of our civilization, then there's nothing wrong with you having it.
After saying those words, Lord Zanguini's waved his hand, and a small apple appeared. It was similar to the one Desmond had given him back in the Gaia continent, but this one was smaller and had all sorts of mysterious runes engraved on its surface. Just watching those runes made Cain feel his mastery over the law of blood would increase. It was a treasure at a much higher level than the blood gem heart, and even if Cain's rebirth heart had not attained an 18 revolution refinement, there was a high chance it would be enough to heal him.
This is an origin blood apple. The Sanguis blood tree produces one every 1,000 years and will not only heal your heart, but also engrave the runes of the law of blood in your bones. I will help you assimilate it into your body.
There was a solemn yet decisive expression on Lord Zanguini's face as he glanced at Cain and the apple. Not a single shred of hesitation could be seen in his eyes as he was ready to give the majestic treasure. Although the origin blood apple was indeed appealing to Cain, he could not accept it, not just because of the burden of such a favor, but the fact there was nothing to heal. Yet, before he could even find a way to turn down the apple, Lord Cabuto spoke.
The origin blood apple might not be enough. Here, boy, this will do you wonders.
Lord Cabuto waved his hand and brought out what seemed to be a tiny golden seed that continuously emitted bursts of sunlight energy, the same that sent Cain flying across the Hyperion continent.
Its name is Sunlight Tree Seed. It will enter your rebirth heart and use its energy to send roots across it, mending all the wounds. It is normally a treasure of the astral rebirth path of power, but in your case it will be enough to heal your wounds, especially if combined with the power of the origin blood apple.
Cain was truly at a loss for words as he saw how the duo practically shoved those divine treasures in his direction. He knew that the apple and seed were extremely precious even for powerhouses of their level, but their eyes showed no hesitation. He understood that they did it to establish goodwill with him, but they did not demand anything, only expecting him to be the kind of man who remembers his friends. Cain sighed as he stared at the duo, and the next second, his eyes began to glow with red light as he no longer suppressed the bursting astral wave inside his heart and deactivated the cloaking power of his red mask.
Boom!
Shock appeared in the eyes of the true Titans as they saw the burst of sky blue and dark purple wave emanating from Kane's body, each energy pool extremely pure and tempered to the absolute peak.
Dual cultivation.
Lord Zanguini's couldn't help but shout as he saw the essence wave and astral wave emanating from Kane's rebirth heart and evolution core. Although Kane had intended to hide his special state from everybody, the duo had shown him goodwill by revealing great secrets, and it was clear they wanted to help him regardless of the cost. That was why he chose to tell them the truth. Find more chapters on Freeweb Novel.
The Blood King crippled my heart, but I was able to heal it using a treasure I stole from a Divine Ascension Atrox.
Kane revealed the truth behind his recovery, but still hid certain aspects, such as the subject of tribulation refinement. For one, there were no gains in revealing it since the stronger you are, the weaker the effect of low revolution flames would have, and for the duo that was already at the late Divine Ascension, there would be no real enhancement in talent or battle power. Besides, Kane had to be careful with this ability since he was sure it would soon spread across the Atrox Immortus Empire as Astrid began using it to enhance her race. Lord Zanguini's pulled the blood apple back as he stared at Kane with a complicated expression on his face before finally speaking with a stern voice.
Boy, I understand that you were forced to take the Essence evolution path during your stay in the Atrox continent, and I'm glad you managed to fix your rebirth heart, but I can feel the vibrant force in your energy pools, and it seems that you are taking the path of dual cultivation. I understand that you are a genius, and indeed, your talent is something I have never seen before, but even so, dual cultivation is a waste of time and resources. Even if it helps you now, after one of your paths reaches the Divine Ascension realm, the other that will be stuck in the peak apotheosis realm would bring no benefits at all.
Kane could see the solemnity with which Lord Zanguini spoke, and the man's words were true since if he could not evolve both paths into the divine realms, then it would be a waste of time.
Boy, you should heed Wildebeest. It's not a matter of resources since I am willing to give you full access to the Solis clan's treasury, but you need to think of the future. Time waits for none.
Lord Kabuto also expressed his concern as he could not help but fear that Kane might follow a broken path, which would drain his time and talent and end up in failure, stopping him from achieving his destiny and facing the darkness. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 522, Bloodline Heritage, EI. Kane smiled at the duo before waving his hand, making a starry gem appear.
If I could not break through in both paths, I wouldn't waste my time on a wild goose chase, but there is a way. The most mysterious person I've encountered in my entire life gave me this starry gem, which will open once after reaching the apotheosis realm on both paths. I know there is danger, and I might be the target of a bad joke, but my instincts tell me I am making the right choice. No matter what, I will evolve until breaking beyond the wave king rank in both paths and find out the truth.
A sharp light appeared in the eyes of Lord Zanguini's and Lord Kabuto as they heard Kane's words, and saw the conviction in his eyes.
Could you tell us more about that person who gave you the starry gem?
Lord Kabuto spoke with a solemn expression as he was intrigued by the type of man that could incite a pragmatic divine genius like Kane into such a path. Kane smiled and did not hesitate before revealing everything he knew about the old man, including the circumstances in which he met with that person. One of the reasons he was telling the duo all this was to see if they could help him unveil the mysteries behind that person. Lord Kabuto and Lord Zanguini's were shocked to hear that Kane met that person shortly after arriving in Kronos, and that he encountered this one right after landing in Hyperion. Clearly, such a man was not normal, but the duo could not help but shake their heads as they had no recollection of someone like that.
Mubrat, could you allow us to inspect the starry gem? I will be cautious and will not force it.
Lord Zanguini's glanced at the starry gem with a meaningful expression as he made that request. Read new adventures at Freeweb Novel. Kane glanced at the man for a moment before softly nodding. If Lord Zanguini's could access that information without needing to go through the requirements, Kane would finally get an answer as to whether dual cultivation was the right path or not. Besides, he did not have a problem sharing the knowledge with the duo, so he handed over the starry gem. Lord Zanguini smiled as he saw Kane's trust and took a deep breath as he calmly sent his ego wave into it, trying to find a way into the information stored inside. However, his ego wave had just touched the starry gem when his entire body trembled, and he began to bleed from the eyes as an expression of utter pain appeared on his face.
Damn it.
The pain was so great that the patriarch of the Zanguini's clan could not help but shout in pain as he retracted his ego wave and looked at the starry gem with dread. Lord Kabuto was surprised to see that, and so was Kane. He had already attempted to access the information of the starry gem, but the only thing that happened to him was not being able to do it, and never did the starry gem react so violently. Lord Zanguini's took a moment to calm the pain before handing the starry gem back to Kane and cleaning the blood from his face.
There is a willpower inside that starry gem. It reacted to mine and nearly shattered a piece of my ego wave upon contact.
The sense of shock and awe in the eyes of Lord Kabuto and Kane grew even stronger as they understood that Lord Zanguini's ego wave had risen above the divine ascension realm. Yet, the person who made this starry gem had willpower so strong that a single thread nearly shattered the old man's mind. Although that did not tell the trio the contents of the starry gem, it made one thing clear. The power of the person behind it was mightier than a true titan. That was shocking for many reasons, the greatest of all being that it was the limit of ether, and anyone above that level should have already been forced to leave the world and march into the astral sea. Silence reigned momentarily as the trio looked at each other and wondered what type of person that old man was, whose willpower could easily trample that of a true titan and who seemed capable of tracking every move Kane made, even across continents.
Given all that we've learned, the most logical choice would be for you to continue your current path. We don't know that man's intentions or goals, but one thing we do know is that he is immensely powerful. Since that is the case, he could have easily killed you to take your memories, yet he seems to be interested in your growth. Even if we discover that dual cultivation is a dead end, you will not lose much as you are already nearing the Wave King rank.
Lord Kabuto's words were met with a nod from Lord Zanguini's. That seemed the most logical path given the circumstances. Kane had already decided on his path and would follow it regardless of the duo's thoughts, but he was pleased to see they agreed. It seemed that they would be willing to open their coffers for him, making his journey ahead much more straightforward. After all, the amount of resources he was using right now for his Wave Champion cultivation base could match those of a Wave King or even Apotheosis Masters. Once he became a Wave King, he would need resources that even Divine Ascension Masters would find daunting, and it was best if he got the help of two true titans.
Since everything is in order, we should start the bloodline heritage. Boy, are you ready?
Kane adopted a solemn expression as he nodded to Lord Kabuto and assumed a meditative position on the ground, focusing the full power of his cultivation into maintaining his body in a state of life force excitation. He then removed the upper part of his robe, revealing a well-defined body full of muscles, yet still lean. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 523, Bloodline Heritage, IV.
Wildebeest, it will be faster if you help us.
Enjoy exclusive content from Freeweb Novel. Lord Zanguini's eyes sharpened as he stood before Kane and placed his hand on the young Godslayer human's head, channeling his body's vitality into Kane's. Once Lord Kabuto saw that everything was in order, he positioned himself behind Kane and placed his hand on the back of the young Godslayer human. The next second, his eyes burst with golden flames as he unleashed the full power of his willpower, unleashing waves of destructive radiation power into Kane's spine. Kane's eyes widened, and immediately, a red light burst from them as he experienced a pain unlike anything he had ever felt before. It was so intense that he wanted to scream, but he clenched his teeth and endured the agonizing destruction of his bone marrow. Bloodline heritage involved more than just implanting someone's blood in his body. It required the complete destruction of an individual's bone marrow before creating a new one that would generate a new lineage. After 10 minutes of overwhelming pain, every single cell of Cain's bone marrow ceased to exist, leaving him covered in cold sweat, extremely hurt and weakened. Even with all his energy pools and radiance of life healing him, he would have had difficulty remaining conscious if not for Lord Zanghini's constantly sending life force and vitality into his body. At this point, Lord Kabuto needed to select the type of blood he would use to create Cain's new bone marrow. He could use the most common blood coursing through his arteries and veins, granting Cain a very weak and diluted Solis lineage. Of course, Lord Kabuto would not use such a subpar method with Cain, and both the Godslayer human and Lord Zanghini's thought the old man would use the blood from his own marrow to replenish it, or maybe go a step further and use the blood inside his rebirth heart. If Lord Kabuto used the blood from his rebirth heart, it would give Cain a very powerful and pure bloodline, not any less potent than normal geniuses of the Solis clan. However, there was a limit to the number of times such a procedure could be performed, since there was a limited amount inside the sacred organ.
Thumpy.
Just as the duo was wondering what type of blood Lord Kabuto would use for Cain's new lineage, a heart's beating echoed across the room. Cain smiled as he saw that the old man would use his rebirth heart, but then his eyes widened as he saw a burning sky-blue reddish flame emerging from Lord Kabuto's chest.
Soul bloodline.
Cain and Lord Zanghini's shouted in unison as they saw Lord Kabuto unleashing the car of his cultivation path and his entire existence, the fusion of his lineage, rebirth heart, and soul. Although theory dictated that using your soul bloodline to perform the bloodline heritage was the best possible path, no one thought about it, as it would mean severing a piece of your soul in the process. Not only would that be extremely painful for the patriarch, dozens of times harder than the marrow disintegration, but it would also be extremely harmful. In the worst-case scenario, it would leave Lord Kabuto in a coma, and even in the best-case scenario, it would significantly damage his cultivation path and lifespan. However, before Cain or Lord Zanghini's could even say a word, the soul bloodline of the patriarch of the Solis clan began to invade Cain's spine.
Damn it, you madman.
Lord Zanghini shouted as he opened his mouth, and a stream of vibrant blood emerged and pierced into Lord Kabuto's body, helping the old man endure the immense pressure and damage that severing a piece of his soul bloodline would generate. Cain was in no position to do anything, and could only accept as the new marrow flooded his spine, while the vitality of Lord Zanghini's helped his body with the transition. Every second that passed, Cain's body experienced overwhelming changes. In the first 10 minutes, the color of his hair changed to white, and the darkness that flooded every corner of his eyes faded, leaving only shining golden irises. However, that was just the beginning. As the bloodline inside Cain grew more potent, every single cell in his body was growing more powerful. A shocking force tempered his body from the inside out, improving the state of his blood rebirth and energy pool.
Boom.
Finally, after an hour, the evolution of his bloodline finished, and a burst of scorching energy emerged from Cain's body. The most potent emanations came from the golden blood runes covering his arms, chest, and legs. He did not gain the physical characteristics of the Solis clan, but everybody could feel the immensely potent bloodline force coming from those runes. Cain only needed to clench his fists to feel just how much his body had improved, and the power was nothing short of amazing.
Tappy. Madman.
However, before Cain could even focus on his power, he heard a body falling to the ground and saw how Lord Zanghini's appeared next to Lord Kabuto. The patriarch of the Solis clan looked like he had aged 100 years in this single hour, and his body had lost a significant amount of its vitality. The old man was having difficulty breathing, but there was a smile on his face as he stared at Cain and saw his changes.
Good, it seems that everything worked fine.
Cain's frown deepened as he observed Lord Kabuto's condition. The old man was not in immediate danger of dying, but his state was truly deplorable, and his life force was in complete disarray, even as Lord Zanghini's tried to stabilize his condition. Severing even a small part of one's soul was not a trivial matter. The repercussions were significant, affecting the entire being. Lord Kabuto had understood the gravity of this act, yet he proceeded regardless. Witnessing Lord Kabuto lying on the ground, yet smiling despite his weakened state, Cain's eyes sparked with resolve. He extended his hand, and a massive cauldron materialized in the room. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 524, Revealing Secrets and Keeping Others. Lord Cabuto and Lord Zanguines saw the refinement cauldron appear, but did not understand what Cain was trying to do.
Please put Lord Cabuto, no, please put Forrester father in the cauldron.
Cain said with a meaningful tone, prompting a smile from the weakened patriarch of the Solis clan. Lord Zanguines did not understand Cain's goal, but the best he could do was to diminish the damage, and it did not seem he would stabilize Lord Cabuto's condition. Since that was the case, he could just hope the young man had a way to fix things, so he put Lord Cabuto inside the cauldron. Cain then took an 18 revolution flame from his spatial ring, and a complicated smile appeared on his face as he realized he was continually revealing his secrets to the duo. An 18 revolution refinement will not have a meaningful impact on the cultivation of someone like him, but it might be enough to reinforce his sacred organs. Bursting red light appeared in Cain's eyes as he put the sphere of fire inside the cauldron, closed the lid, and communicated with the patriarch of the Solis clan.
Use all your power to revolve the energy that will flood your body to assimilate it.
Lord Cabuto did not understand what was happening, but nodded with the little strength he had left while his golden light appeared in his eyes. Cain saw that the old man was ready and released the 18 revolution flame. The next second, the flame coalesced around the body of the patriarch of the Solis clan, and soon, waves of world energy began to flood every cell of his body. Lord Zanguines' eyes widened as he saw those waves of world energy flooding into the cauldron. He did not understand the type of refinement Cain was performing, but it did not matter since he perceived Lord Cabuto's soul bloodline had begun to stabilize. Cain clenched his teeth as he used every iota of willpower on the procedure. Lord Cabuto was doing his best, but the damage to his soul had weakened his mind, so nearly all the burden of the process fell on him, and failure would not only worsen the old man's state, but could kill him. There was only one option, and that was success. The red light in Cain's eyes glowed with more and more power as he pushed his mind and abilities beyond their limits to ensure the process went smoothly. Minutes passed as the amount of the world energy flooding the old man's body kept growing, increasing the pressure. However, there was also good news since the more the Saint Tribulation enhancement advanced, the more stable Lord Cabuto's soul bloodline became. After nearly an hour, Cain felt a sharp pain in his mind, and his body could not stop trembling due to mental and physical exhaustion, but there was a smile on his face. Lord Cabuto's eyes finally regained their vigor as his soul bloodline stabilized. It was still badly wounded, but it would not threaten to leave him in a coma. Lord Cabuto was incredibly shocked and confused as he did not understand how he improved so fast. However, he did not waste too much time with those thoughts as the golden light in his eyes burst into flames, and he could finally use the full power of his ego wave again. Cain relaxed after Lord Cabuto began to use his ego wave, which diminished the pressure he faced tremendously. The tribulation enhancement continued for nearly 2 more hours until the waves of world energy that flooded the cauldron faded. Lord Cabuto emerged from the cauldron the next second with a radiant smile on his face. He still looked exhausted and pale, but his energy pool, life force, or soul had no sense of instability.
Madmend, how are you?
Lord Zanguines asked, surprised to see how well Lord Cabuto was after losing a piece of his soul. He was curious about what effect enhancement could have on a person. Lord Cabuto didn't provide a quick answer as he took a moment to analyze the state of his soul, body, and vitality.
My soul bloodline is still wounded, and trying to evolve my cultivation base in this condition will be nearly impossible. But I should not have problems with my life force or cultivation base loss, and in a fight, I could deploy around 80% of my power without drawbacks.
Despite the severe drawbacks, Lord Cabuto's smile did not fade, as he expected to find himself in a way worse state after losing a piece of his soul bloodline. Lord Zanguines was surprised to hear that. The fact that Lord Cabuto's cultivation would not weaken and his life force was stable was already excellent news, and that he could deploy 80% of his battle power without drawbacks was even more impressive. Lord Cabuto was just as surprised as Lord Zanguines, and then the duo turned toward Cain with awe, wonder, and curiosity. The young man had managed to deploy a power that could heal the wounds of the wounded sacred organ of a divine ascension master. Cain could see the curiosity in the duo, but knew they would not ask out of respect for his privacy. Still, the cat was already out of the bag, so the best path was just to reveal the truth, or at least part of it.
It's called tribulation enhancement. It is an ancient art that I learned during my time in the Chronos continent.
When the duo heard that, a somber expression appeared on their faces. A power such as tribulation enhancement in the hands of the Atrox Immortus race would be very dangerous for the Dew's behemoth race.
Only I have mastered this art according to my knowledge, no one else.
Cain could see the worry in the duo's eyes and immediately clarified that only he knew it. Enjoy more content from Freeweb Novel. Although that was a lie, Cain was sure that if the patriarchs were to find out about Astrid, they would channel the entire power of the Empire to stop her growth, and he would not allow anyone to harm the young woman. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 525, Becoming a Wave King, I. Lord Zanguines and Lord Cabuto had already developed a nearly blind trust in Cain, so they immediately accepted his words.
I wonder, could you teach us?
Lord Cabuto asked in a very formal tone, his expression making it clear that he would be fine if the young man refused. As for offering to buy the knowledge, he had already made it clear that Cain would have access to the entire Solis clan's treasury without restrictions. Luckily for the duo, Cain saw no reason to refuse. He extended his hand, beginning to ignite the life wave and explaining every step of the process as a one-revolution flame appeared in his hand. Lord Cabuto and Lord Zanguines paid immense attention to each word Cain uttered. They took a moment to comprehend the knowledge and principles behind tribulation enhancement before trying to master the technique. Cain observed the duo doing their best and didn't simply lay down without doing anything, seeing it as a chance to finally gauge how strong he had become.
System, scan me.
Cain sought an objective analysis, and the Absolute Life Form system soon provided it. Scanning vessel. Scan of vessel completed. Name, Cain Lorifa. Race, Godslayer humankind. Path of power, Astral Rebirth, Late Wave Champion, Essence Evolution, Late Wave Champion. Lineage, Solis lineage, maximum purity. Wave talent, High Tier 9, High Tier 9. Stats. Strength, 65.2, 79.4. Agility, 38.2, 45.2. Vitality, 80.2, 91.2. Astral Wave, 46.2, 57.9. Essence Wave, 53.3, 61.2. Blood Energy Astral, 93.5, 112.2. Blood Energy Essence, 73.2, 88.4. Blood Rebirth, Mercury Stage, Main Law Mastery, Law of Blood, Medium Law Fragmentation. Secondary Law Mastery, Law of Space, Deep Basic Understanding. Secondary Law Mastery, Law of Darkness, Medium Law Fragmentation. Note, Wave Virus inside the vessel enhanced wave talent by 28.1%. Cain was surprised by his current stats. Of course, all this progress did not come solely from his new lineage, since it had been nearly 2 months since his last stat check, but he was impressed to see how much his strength and vitality had grown and how his wave talent had also evolved, nearing the limit of Tier 9. What confused him was the measure of his blood rebirth that seemed to have an unintelligible mark. It was likely because he had not provided the system with the cultivation knowledge regarding his special condition. Cain extended his index finger and made a small cut in it, and the next second, a drop of blood emerged from it. It was thick and heavy like mercury, but that was not all. It had shining particles.
Starlight Stage,
Exclaimed Lord Cabuto, his voice surprising Cain. The young man saw Lord Cabuto looking at him with so much shock that the flame forming in his hand faded. The old man was not alone, since Lord Zanguines reacted the same way.
Starlight Stage.
Cain was confused by the term since he had never heard of it before, and there was no indication of it in the astral rebirth path of power cultivation techniques he had. Lord Kabuto, unconcerned about the loss of the flame, stared at Cain.
The state of your blood. I've read about it in some ancient texts. When your blood's energy concentration and tempering reach the extreme, shining particles appear due to the crystallization of astral wave in it. I've never seen it before, but your blood matches perfectly the description.
Cain smiled as he heard that, realizing his blood had reached the zenith of blood rebirth.
Your essence wave and astral wave have reached their saturation point. You should prepare yourself to evolve into the wave king rank before the opening of the astral bloodline realm.
Cain's eyes narrowed as he heard the words from Lord Kabuto and took a moment to evaluate the state of his cultivation base. His blood rebirth had reached a stage that seemed to mock the absolute limit of the realm, and his law mastery was already at an incredibly high level, nearing deep law fragmentation in the law of blood and extreme basic understanding of the law of space. Although Cain could wait to enter the astral blood sacred realm, breaking through in a place full of danger was not exactly the wisest choice. It was more likely that one would end up dead rather than gaining a massive upgrade performing a breakthrough in such places.
Let's do it. Great, you are using the Crimson Void cultivation technique for your essence path, which is one of the best techniques of the inner universe systems, so you should stick with it, especially since you are adept with the law of blood. But since you have the Solis lineage, you should use a corresponding technique.
Lord Kabuto waved his hand, and the next second, a starry gem appeared before the Godslayer human. Cain caught the starry gem, and as he focused on it, words appeared in his mind.
Solar Blaze Path. That is the core astral rebirth cultivation technique of the Solis clan. Since you have its lineage running through your heart, there is no better cultivation technique for you.
Cain nodded as he heard the words from Lord Zanguini's, but there was a meaningful light in his eyes. He felt a level of affinity with this technique that went beyond his bloodline, which made sense considering he saw himself as a majestic supernatural sun capable of sundering all darkness.
Since everything is in order now, I will retire as I have several matters to attend to. Brat, take this.
Find your next adventure on Freeweb Novel. Lord Zanguini's waved his hand and sent the Origin blood apple to Cain, surprising this one that the old man would still give it to him.
The astral bloodline realm is dangerous, so you should keep it. If you want to repay me, keep an eye on the brat from my clan.
After saying those words with a smile, Lord Zanguini's nodded to Lord Kabuto and left the room. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates.